If one interview is great,
two is mo better.
Travis Shrodes from NIS America
and Tyler Hogle from Screaming Villains
on the Shelf
starts right now.
Thanks for joining us this month. I'm Sol.
And I'm Cyrix. This month's episode is just so jam-packed. Let's just dive right into it.
There was a new console announced by Analogue. Analogue, the makers of the Super NT most recently, and was it the NT before that?
Yeah, the Analogue NT was the original one.
Yeah, the NT Mini. They have announced the Mega SG. The Mega SG, which is going to basically be the Genesis / Mega Drive, and then it also supports a bunch of other legacy Sega stuff. What do you think? Analogue
does good work. I'm not super excited about this one only because I wasn't like a Sega kind of guy. Like I enjoyed the Sega games, but I never owned the systems. I really got into the systems, but I love that they're doing it. I mean, Analogue, there's only like two providers of these types of systems that do it real justice, and Analogue's one of them. The ones who do the actual hardware emulation as opposed to the software emulation. So Analogue is probably by far the best one, but the problem with Analogue is that you're gonna pay for it.
Oh, you definitely are. But at the same time, the quality level it's backed by the FPGAs behind it are programmed by Kevtris. Super famous in the FPGA community for his work to this point. And he's the guy that's provided them everything, all the cores that they've had on their previous systems to this point. It just kind of, like, it screams quality. I mean, even when you look at this thing, the visual appearance of the console, just like the Super NT, prior to that, the NT Mini, those things looked amazing. This one's going to be in like four different colors. It's not really four different colors. There's 3 different versions of black where the buttons on it would be a different color. And then there's a white version, which is pretty much all white.
I kind of feel like at this point, they might as well just take custom orders. I mean, just like pick your buttons, pick your shell, pick all that stuff, and just let people customize it. And then they could even hook up with a graphics designer, add like 2 months onto the order, and charge an extra premium to have people be able to design their own,
that'd be pretty sweet.
Their own shells. I think it'd be kind of neat. Obviously, that's pipe dream type stuff. What they're doing is amazing in its own right, so they don't really have to worry too much about appealing to that kind of consumer, because they're going to sell their products. Analogue is, like I said, by far probably the best one that's out there, and they are definitely well known. I have an Analogue NT bookmarked as a potential purchase down the road. It's hard for me to pull the trigger on that price right now, but down the road, maybe I get it as a gift or something. I don't know, but if I'm going to go that route, like, because right now I use the original hardware and I upscale it. But if I'm going to go the route of full on emulation type setup, it's going to be probably using the NT Mini, just because it's so precise and so reliable.
There's some really cool things that they're doing with this particular console that they have not done yet in the past. The first thing is that the side of the console has the port that allows the Analogue Mega SG to plug directly into the Sega CD or Mega CD using the Edge connector. So what we're saying here is the extra add-on hardware will be compatible with a direct connection to Analogue's device, which is kind of unheard of. That's different. That's new. On top of that, they are going to have these cartridge adapters, because the system won't just support the Genesis / Mega Drive. This will also support the old Mark III, the Master System, which, by the way, the Master System adapter will come with the console. It'll also support Game Gear, Sega MyCard, and then like the SG 1000 and SC 3000s, which are some other legacy old Sega systems as well. So basically, nearly or pretty much everything from the 8 and 16-bit eras of Sega. Now, the one thing that it does not support, neither natively nor due to how the hardware works with the video output, the 32X? Does not support the 32X.
Yeah, that's what I was going to.
There's a marginal chance that in the future they may be able to get the carts working directly. But my understanding after some conversation is that that is such an outside chance, it's not likely to happen. The good news is that the 32X library is small, and maybe in the future, maybe there'll be some other version, or maybe he'll come up with a cartridge add-on that can be just plugged in, similar to the 32X. Who knows? The sky's the limit.
The 32X is a small library, but that's also one of the big draws to it, because there is a handful of expensive titles for the 32X in the secondary market, but it's not unheard of for people to have a full set. So that would be a major appeal to the collectors of 32X, because the ones who are going to go after a full set, or the ones who already have a full set, would probably love to be able to play all those games without any kind of issue or cleaning or anything from original hardware. Plus, the ability to use HDMI is a major factor when going with hardware emulation like this.
Yeah, to me, at least we're getting what we're getting. I could literally see them just doing a piece of hardware almost identical to the 32X from like an add-on standpoint, where you plug it into the cartridge slot, and then you plug your 32X cartridges into that, just without the cable requirements that the 32X has. Because I don't know if you ever owned a 32X.
No, I never owned a Sega system.
Yeah, so the 32X, the way that it connects, it's not just the cartridge slot. You actually have to supply it separate power and a video pass-through.
I did know about that. I never owned one, but I have watched a lot of videos and documentaries and stuff on it.
Yeah. So, but for those that haven't seen that or didn't know that, that's what's going to make this incompatible with the 32X hardware, and then just some of the complexity in what it takes to actually make the FPGA perform the way the 32X performs, on top of emulating the rest of the console, is a bit much and may be prohibitive, at least at this time. The other thing that I'm really liking when I look at this is the controller from 8BitDo. You know, I'm a big fan of 8BitDo. They make amazing controllers. They're, in my opinion, they're probably the top third-party controller manufacturer out there. The Genesis controller they have made just looks beautiful.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of that. I'm a huge fan of 8BitDo. I don't see them doing a bad job anyway, but I did see the controller, and it does look pretty good. So 8BitDo does put out good hardware. So I'm sure there's not going to be any problems there. And there might be some growing pains to start with, especially for people who aren't used to. I don't know about weight or exact dimensions, so it might be a little bit of growing pains. But for the most part, you eventually get used to the 8BitDo systems, and everything tends to go
really
well.
Comfortable. Yeah, I mean, it's got the nice rounded edges and whatnot, and I've never had a problem in general with my 8BitDo hardware, and I've got a number of them of different kinds. So I don't know that I'm going to pick this up right away. I still haven't dropped the money on the other systems, as nice as they are. My Switch keeps me very busy and eats up all that extra money. But gosh, I'm going to buy it eventually. I'm going to pick these up eventually, and probably just, I know there's a little sacrilege for collectors. I'm probably going to pair it with an EverDrive, much in the way that I did my GBA.
Yeah.
These are just beautiful consoles here. So speaking of like, so, you talked about how the quality on these are just so high. Conversely, what I think about this next item is on the opposite side of that spectrum. It does not look great to me, even though they're hyping it up.
You're talking about the Huawei Mate 20X?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know, the Huawei Mate 20X is a phone put out by Huawei, which is a Chinese manufacturer of cell phones and other technologies. And they have decided in their latest press release, or their latest showing at a technology show, to compare the Mate 20X to the Nintendo Switch. And it
seems like a bad idea.
It's getting a little bit of blowback. To give a little bit of comparison, though, the Mate 20X has a 7.2-inch screen, whereas the Nintendo Switch has a 6.2-inch screen. The Mate 20X also has a 1080p display, whereas the Nintendo Switch in handheld only has a 720. And the battery life is 5,000 millihours next to 4310. So the total battery life is like almost 7 hours on the Mate 20, whereas the Switch, depending on the game you're playing, on average is roughly about 3 hours. But the big problem when it comes to comparing these two is the Nintendo Switch is $300, whereas the Mate 20X starting price is just over $1,000. And you have to... They have like a special slide-on adapter that lets you use it's almost like a Joy-Con, but it's nowhere near as good with the phone. But the other side is just left empty, so you're using touch controls on that side with your other hand. But the comparison being that it's a phone, so you're playing just mobile games. And when they did their side-by-side comparison, the game they chose to show was Arena of Valor, which is perfectly fine to do a comparison because the version that's on Switch is just a mobile port, but people don't buy the Switch to play mobile games. And the eShop has a ton of games that will never work on Huawei's platform. So there really is no comparison to be made. They're pushing a narrative that's not going to get them anywhere, I don't think.
Well, I mean, okay, so cost aside, because there's definitely a factor to that, but cost aside, this crappy Joy-Con looking adapter that is on here, that alone, first off, there's only one, right? It's like you said, it's the left side of that with the stick.
And all it features is an analog stick and a D-pad. Yeah.
Right, I think there's even a shoulder button on it, but
there may be.
Yeah, but aside from that, it's one half of the equation, right? So if you really want to make a great comparison, you should have the other half. But then the design of these, it would be much like walking around with your Switch in your pocket. I've got my Switch in my hand here. If I was to carry my Switch, even with the Joy-Cons detached, and like take one of them off and put the Joy-Con in my other pocket, this is a lot to carry in a pocket, like you would with a phone. I don't see a lot of people walking around with this pseudo Joy-Con attachment with them. And on top of that, it's an L shape. It's not just like the Joy-Con where it stops. The bottom actually has a piece that runs across from left to right.
Because it's essentially working as a dock. It docks to the side of instead of sliding on, it docks to the side.
So basically, you end up with this really awkward looking piece of hardware. And then You know, they tout the screen size being larger, but the fact that you don't have something on the right-hand side means because you're using your thumb or whatever on the right side to tap the screen for things, you're eating up real estate. You're blocking it with your hand. Unlike the Switch, where you're holding, if you're handheld mode, you're holding both Joy-Cons and you can see the entire screen. So I think there's some other problems with this comparison aside from the price. If you were to take the Switch and like tell Nintendo, okay, go make $1,000 Switch, imagine what they would put in that. You know, imagine where they would be at and how much better that would be as well. They would have a larger battery. They would have a higher definition screen. They would have a better CPU, etc. That's simply not possible at the price point, you know, that you brought up, right? So this is difficult for. I think Huawei put themselves in a bad situation trying to make the comparison. I think this is something that they aren't. It's a battle they're not going to win, basically.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you have a lot of extra features with the Mate 20X. It's a phone, it's GPS, it's a web browser, it's a video storage. It has 128 gigs of internal storage, I believe, in the model they were showing. So it has a lot of pluses. But
well, yeah, but if they were saying the battle is that they're a phone,
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. There's a lot of pluses to it because you're getting a lot of extra stuff, and they could say that compensates for the additional price, but that's not what the Switch is trying to be. So they're comparing apples to pears, basically. Like it's not quite different, you know, not completely different, but not exactly the same. So it's not really a comparison they will make. I will give them some kudos though that on the battery lasting life like slide they used on stage, they used the white Joy-Con switch, which looks absolutely crisp.
The bottom line here is that they're not gonna pull anybody away from the Switch using this device. No, it just doesn't commit. Like you said, apples to pears. We're in two different worlds with this. Need a phone? Great. You know, check this out and maybe you like it, because what's important when you buy a phone is, does it do the things your smartphone does enough to what you like? And I've got a Nexus 6P for my phone. That's Huawei hardware. It's a wonderful device. I love my 6P. I didn't even run into the battery problems that other people had with it. I simply used it enough that eventually the battery life, you know, degraded like all lithium-ion batteries do. And so I had the battery replaced with another battery. And as soon as I did that, back to normal use and full day, you know, usage on the phone, no problem. Works great. And I haven't given it up yet. I don't see myself giving it up even for a Pixel 3. So, you know, I'm sure from a phone standpoint, it's a great phone. It probably is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of consumers that are like me. They don't upgrade their phones very often, so this isn't really a huge draw anyway. Like, I'm not enticed to buy this phone. I'm using a Samsung Galaxy Note 3. And it does everything I want it to do. I can play Hearthstone on it. I can, you know, update show notes. I can check our emails and stuff like that. It does everything I need it to do. Huawei's not going to sell me on a phone that they're comparing to a console, especially considering that I'm going to have a decade's worth of mobile apps I can put on it, which is nothing compared to the games that are being put on the Switch at all.
Yeah.
So there's no
comparison.
You
really want to play something, you're probably going to grab your Switch.
Yeah. I mean, what games can I play on the phone that are comparable to the Switch? I mean, Arena of Valor, Musinx,
Fortnite,
Voez. Like, right. These are games that we knew were mobile ports when we got them. So.
Well, let's not wait any longer. Let's dive right into our first guest. We were extremely lucky to be able to make this connection and have them on the show. We have a very special guest with us today. We are honored to have NIS America in-house. Travis, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction.
We are excited to have you here. We have a ton of fans that they are super excited to hear all about NIS America and Nipponichi Software itself, and we're just overjoyed. So let me dive right into it. So although I know our audience is familiar already with NIS America, but can you just give us a kind of a brief history on both NISA and the parent company? Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, so Nipponichi Software is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. It was originally founded, of course, in Japan to create, as earliest titles were on the Super Famicom. So they are one of the more experienced developers out there. They're also self-publishing, which is kind of a big thing, and a lot of people have never sort of heard about them. They've been sort of perpetually indie for the last 25 years. I had a chance to actually go out and see them this year when we were there for Tokyo Game Show. They're headquartered in a sort of relatively small area of Japan called Gifu Prefecture, which is a little bit inside from Nagoya, more inland. They are most prolific for delivering kind of the real standouts in strategy RPGs. So a lot of people are familiar with, of course, the Disgaea series, but a lot of our efforts at NIS have been sort of all over the place in different categories, just from Nipponichi Software as the developer. So titles like the isometric survival horror Yomawari, the upcoming Liar Princess and the Blind Prince. There's sort of a range of different things that they do, and it's kind of always amazing to see what's coming next from them. As for ourselves, NIS America, we are celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. We originally started in 2003 after the successful release of the original Disgaea for PlayStation 2. Basically, at that point, NIS decided, well, I think we've made a big enough success to create our own publisher in the West, and so they founded NIS America with the intent of becoming essentially the publishing arm for Nipponichi Software in America. Since then, we have grown substantially. We offer publishing for both North America and for Europe through a number of different distributor partners that we work with over there. So in more recent years, it's been really interesting to see a lot of our fans coming in from Europe as well. We do publishing not just for Nipponichi Software titles, but also for other developers. Prior to their branching out into their own American division, we were previously publishers for Spike Chunsoft's Danganronpa series. In addition, we published titles for our Kadokawa games such as God Wars and Metal Max Xeno, and other companies as well. This year, we were very, very honored to be able to publish for SNK, both SNK Heroines and SNK 40th Anniversary Collection coming up.
You've pretty much he's already covered the interview. We don't even have to go
every question we had. Like you literally answered. I think there's one game that I have in my list of discussions here that you did not mention.
Well, I think that's what's really great here now is that we can really dive in deep on these things, because I gave a very broad, sort of expansive look at it.
You did. No, that was fantastic. That was wonderful. Thank you for that. So NIS America provides something kind of unique to Western markets with that blend that you're talking about, the releases from Nipponichi and from other developers. And when it comes to the title, the actual titles created by NIS, I'm sure there's just this super strong brand connection there because of who you guys are. You know, it's the same company essentially, right? But what goes into the decision-making process for what is coming across to the Western shores for those NIS developed games?
That's interesting. It is true that we publish the bulk majority of NIS titles, but there are people with a more watchful eye may notice that we don't publish every NIS title in America. Some titles, just on basis of what they're trying to achieve or the target market for it or something, or the character count or how we have to fit it into a greater sort of calendar for the year. All these things come into play, obviously at the outset, and we have to consider that when creating that initial sort of announcement window towards the marketing plan to the full release. Internally, there's a lot of conversation that typically goes on between the producers and other departments. Well, typically the producers by themselves at the beginning will take a look at a project and determine, what is the potential of this title. That's sort of how things start out. And we don't have, the grandest of expectations for every title. I've worked at several other large companies in the past, and it really is a sort of market by scale. And our sort of more modest leaning expectations of titles also come into how we decide which title gets published. But we are very proud of each and every NIS title that we bring out in North America and Europe.
Obviously, the Disgaea series comes to mind when we're thinking about NIS, and we've recently seen Disgaea 1 Complete released on the Switch. Considering now that we have both 1 and 5, would you think it's a pretty good possibility that we're going to see 2 through 4 at some point?
Well, again, keen-eyed listeners may know about the Japanese title of Disgaea 1 Complete, which is, of course, Disgaea 1 Refine. That's how they released it in Japan. Mm-hmm. We are very much into building up this brand identity as these complete titles. Yeah. So Disgaea 5 Complete coming out and combining all the previously released DLC and even adding some more content to it for its Switch release. And then Disgaea 1 Complete, taking all the content that has been created for Disgaea 1 since its launch through PSP, DS, and PC, and combining that and even giving it a brand new coat of paint for that release, really encompassing this idea of complete. So when we're looking at these titles, especially Disgaea, we really want to continue this idea of complete. And so while we have nothing to announce at this point, I just want to really emphasize that is sort of Disgaea is a premier title for us. It is a series we put a lot of love into, and in return, Nintendo fans have shown a huge amount of love for us. So that has been pretty reciprocal, and we really do appreciate it, and we want to continue it.
When Disgaea originally released, back in its original form, it scored well, but it was often referred to as the best game that nobody played. Obviously, the series has found an audience, and I'm looking forward to more Disgaea on Switch for sure. But did the Steam release of Disgaea PC help push the plan to bring Disgaea 1 to Switch at all?
I'm wondering about that. Really, from my perspective, I would say that the biggest thing that brought Disgaea 1 Complete to creation was actually the anniversary, the 15th anniversary. So we had actually, done Disgaea 5 Complete the year before. It had done incredibly well for us on Switch. It actually was, and we can go into it a little bit later, but it was basically the catalyst for a lot of what I've been calling the year of Switch for us, where we've been basically identified as probably the second most prolific publisher of Switch games this year in terms of total quantity. It's because of our trust in the system, really. But the idea of this Disgaea 1 Complete came from, it is the 15th anniversary and the success of Disgaea 5 Complete. Those were the sort of the two major factors that came in to the decision-making process.
All right, but speaking of Steam releases, might there be a chance of seeing something like Phantom Brave come to the Switch, since it got re-released on PC and had a really positive reception as well?
We are always looking at our previous titles. Something that people will probably pick up on it is that we never turn down the idea of putting something out on a different platform if there seems to be an audience that is receptive to it. As for some of the other titles like Phantom Brave, we were always in talks with our head studio about that. A lot of times it does come down to where it falls on their schedule. They have lots of new products that they're dealing with, and so whenever they can fit in the time, we do like them working on making sure that older titles are also paid attention to, but that it's a lot about it. It comes down to schedule.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a delicate mix, to work between what you've got kind of new, what you've got out there that has been established, but maybe isn't on a specific platform, especially when it comes to something like the Switch, where you've got this massively growing base of users. And of course, with Nintendo's sort of loyal following, some of those folks aren't as familiar with some of the titles that you might have put out on, say, Sony platforms for the most part, that type of thing. So I think that's kind of an interesting look, from our angle, being fans, that type of thing.
And even from there, and this is anecdotally my own experience sort of observing trends in the industry, but a lot of times when we're looking at this sort of thing, the breakdown is that somebody typically owns maybe a PS4 and a PC, or an Xbox One and a PC, or a Switch and a PC. And so we know that we're not always targeting PlayStation users with a Switch with our titles. That it isn't just people going like, oh, I know those guys. They did all those titles on PS2 or PS3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even to say that about younger gamers who may not have been gaming at the time that those things released. So it's been really incredible to open ourselves up to a sort of a brand new demographic, especially younger Switch fans. I think that's been one of the most rewarding aspects of this, and why we keep pushing so hard for it.
You touched on something when you were talking about Disgaea, about the trust that you have in the platform. Now, we've spoken with a number of publishers and developers for the Switch since our inception, and I'd say one of the most common things that we hear from them is that Nintendo itself has dramatically improved this entire development and publishing experience on the new platform. Would you say that you agree? And if so, for you, what makes that true?
Well, just some background on myself, I'm the marketing manager for NIS America, and I joined the team last year in June. Prior to that, I had worked for other companies such as Crytek and for Konami. And so my relationship with Nintendo has sort of changed over the years, depending on who I was working for and what type of titles we were publishing. Sort of what rather well renowned is the fact that Konami didn't publish any titles for the Wii U, period. So there was a large part of my time where I was not connected to anybody at Nintendo. That being said, when I joined on, we had already had sort of conversations and relationships with people at Nintendo here, though they hadn't really been opened since Disgaea for the DS. So there was a sort of a long time between Disgaea for the DS, and then we did a game called Rodeo the Sky Soldier for 3DS and for Wii U and Wii. And that was the last time that anybody at NIS America had actually talked to somebody from Nintendo, really. And so when Disgaea 5 came out, we were talking very closely with Nintendo because it was a near launch title. And then that success led us to really start taking, and we redirected a lot of our materials to make sure that we were publishing on Switch from then on out. And so that required really constant talking with Nintendo reps, and we've really gotten to know them over there. Been by the office a couple of times since. They're really interested in our lineup. We're really interested in making sure that we're working closer with them. They've been a really, really important first-party partner for us. And, from the perspective of a fan, I think there's a lot of ideas of how companies sort of hedge their bets with different first parties. But honestly, NIS America has never really sided with one over the other. It was whatever sort of offered the opportunity at the time. I would say that it has become easier through a number of different ways, which I'm not, of course, able to discuss too deeply on. But basically, I think a combination of definitely a warming on the part of Nintendo with the stripping of some of the more onerous conditions for publishing have led to a really good working relationship with them, and we're really, really excited about being able to talk to them about this.
That pretty much echoes what we've heard in other ways. I mean, we are how can I put this, moderately familiar with some of the restrictions that were in place with some of the things involved in publishing and distributing previously.
Sure.
So it's interesting to to hear this continued tone where, you know, that warming you talk about is a common theme. From a fan aspect, you know, as boy, I kind of put this out there as a representative of a group of fans. It's nice for us to hear that. We want to hear that. We're happy, you know.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things related to this is that you know, I think a lot of people, when they look at it and they look how Nintendo reacted, especially during Gen 6, Gen 7, they were frequently seen as being the old man in the room, that their policies about online or about growing influencer sort of opportunities and things like that always seemed rather old-fashioned. And to be fair, they're an older company. They're yes. In operation since 1897 or something like that. So I've worked with a lot of Japanese companies, and they can be varying different degrees of controlling or difficult to deal with at times. And I'm sure that was the case, you know, more or less back then. I think something really did change. I can't say for sure, but it really does feel like there's a big push from someone internally to change how their approach is with these sorts of things.
Yeah. So another game you mentioned, this is great that you brought this up. And by the time this airs, Yomawari, the Long Night Collection, will be coming out in a couple of days. So can you kind of tell us a bit about the two games that are in that collection for anybody that hasn't had a chance to familiarize himself? Because I don't know that this is going to be a title that, you know, everybody's going to immediately go, oh, I know exactly what those are. It'll have some fans that know about it, but this is going to be a little bit different for some fans. Yeah,
I love any opportunity I get to talk about Yomawari. It's one of my favorite titles that we have over here. Basically, Yomawari is an isometric survival horror game where you play as a young girl in a rural town in Japan and are currently accosted by sort of ghosts and demons. And you have very sort of simple objectives in a rather open area to achieve from the viewpoint of a child. So when you open up your map, it's made with crayon, and the notes that each character takes down are very sort of simple in the mind of a child. To sort of step back a little bit, I love talking about this aspect too. Yomawari was actually the product of an Inside Indies competition inside of NIS in Japan. So basically every year, Nipponichi, they have a internal contest to see, and anybody in the company can pitch. It's totally open to anybody in the company, and they can pitch any idea they want to make a game. And then they vote on the game, and then they decide based on that which game to make. And Mizukami-san was a illustrator who had the idea of, I want to tell this story that is very familiar to my upbringing in Japan and sort of in rural Japan specifically, where I was always afraid of the things that lurked in the shadows, the things that were always right out of the corner of my vision, and sort of designed this entire game with a sort of hand-drawn, crafted style. And it was such a success with Yomawari Night Alone, originally published on PlayStation Vita, that the next year we were able to make the sequel, Midnight Shadows, published for PlayStation 4 and for Vita. We're really happy that we're able to put out both of them in this collection. This is, of course, the first time Night Alone has been on sort of in a console format and something that you can play on the big screen. Both have transitioned very well to the Switch hardware, and I highly recommend playing them with directional audio and in a dimly lit or dark room.
Not a coincidence when this is coming out then.
No. We actually every year we angle the release right around Halloween, and it's very much, very, very much on purpose.
We don't have enough horror type games on the Switch yet.
It is one of those things. I look on the store, and you see them trickle in oftentimes through the eShop, right? It's a largely digital sort of. I mean, let's be honest, since 2007, 2008, that's where a lot of horror games, especially really popular horror games, have gotten their start, is basically through digital distribution. The real ones that you can think of that come to mind. Things like Doki Doki Literature Club. Those are things that started in digital format. I think one of the more popular ones that we've seen on Switch recently would be something like, I think it's called Angels of Death or Angel of Death. And it's the game that was made into an anime, Last Cour, and was, I think, originally made on something like, was like RPG Maker or something like that. So it was like a Corpse Party type title, which of course Corpse Party has lots of history on Nintendo systems as well. Yomawari is, I think, sometimes maybe gets lumped into that same sort of category, but it's so much more kind of produced. So it's got a great sort of natural hand-drawn aesthetic to it, and a lot of care is taken into this, especially the audio design.
NIS America's publishing and distribution capabilities, you've been a rather popular choice to bring over some great other third-party developed games. Is there something that you look for in specific titles from other developers, and how do your long-standing relationships with certain developers play into those decisions?
Broadly speaking, good faith begets more good faith. So what I mean by that is that we try to cultivate our titles around publishers and not necessarily around titles. Getting a good title is great, and we appreciate it, and it oftentimes makes a lot, from my point of view, it makes my job a lot easier. It's very, very easy to sell a really impressive title. But oftentimes what we're looking for is making sure that we're establishing long-term relationships with our publishing partners. So when we jump in with a new publisher, we are looking to maximize everything that they want to go with, that they want to bring to a Western audience. There's oftentimes not, besides some very rare cases, depending on sort of more or less content and its appropriateness, we are always looking to any sort of title, any sort of genre, whatever there is a publisher who is in Japan who is making good work and wants to bring it stateside, we are interested, and we are taking those calls and we are making those meetings. In particular, we oftentimes look towards, of course, specifically companies that don't have an American branch and typically are more focused on things along the lines of RPGs. Those are sort of the things that the calling cards that we're known for. There's the things that we get recognized, especially in Japan, for. So those are things that other companies are looking at us for. If they have an RPG, they typically tend to look at us, and a couple other companies as well in the West. But we, we're always very competitive on those.
I want Cyrix to ask his next question before I go to mine, because I think it pairs a little bit with what we were talking about.
Okay. I actually, just right before you do, I do want to jump out and just say that when I say that we tend to be known with RPGs, I like to also think that with our current lineup, if you look at our things that we're doing recently, we are definitely branching out into all sorts of new categories. SNK Heroines was a big one for me this year. That was something that I sort of handled up from a product management standpoint. It was very strong. I love fighting games. I love working on fighting games. So that was one that was a lot of people looked at us and they said, "Wait, NIS is publishing that?" Yes, because we should be more than just RPGs. The people who work here, the big portion of them are gamers, and we're very excited about very different types of games.
Yeah, when SNK Heroines launched, I actually watched the Twitch stream that NIS America put on, part of the launch thing.
That was a lot of fun.
I did watch that. My next question, and it comes with a bit of a nudge, is are there any collaborations coming up that you can share with the audience? And the reason why I ask something like this is because Spike Chunsoft's Danganronpa series is a fan favorite that they're really hoping comes to the Switch. Like, our community is ravenous for games like that, and it's been brought up on more than 12 occasions. And you guys help bring that to a worldwide market on other systems. So we're really wanting to know if something like that's coming. But if there are any other collaborations you can speak of, we would love to know.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak directly to, of course, now Spike Chunsoft has their own publishing branch in America, Spike Chunsoft. I've really enjoyed playing Shibuya Scramble, and I'm really looking forward to some of their more upcoming titles. I'm also a huge Fire Pro fan, so I really like the stuff that they're doing over there. Why I bring this up is because now that they do have their own publishing branch, our deal with Danganronpa, it was specifically for console release. Danganronpa on PC was published directly by Spike Chunsoft in Japan. Now that they're sort of taking over more ownership of their titles, kind of what you see from us is kind of what there is. I can't really speak to the future of how that's going to work with their company, but I just like to point out personally, I love their titles. I love what they're doing. I can't wait to see what's next from them. For other partnerships, I think that we've had a lot of real successes this year. I think particularly I've really enjoyed being able to revive several so-called dead titles with a huge developer. I was a huge fan of Goichi Suda, aka Suda51, and being able to do Silver Case that we did last year, 25th Ward that we did this spring, and our upcoming Killer 7 for Steam. We do these things. We undergo these sort of unusual arrangements, bringing back dead games from well-known publishers or from well-known developers and stuff like that, because we want to encourage more work with them. So I think if you look at the people that we're working with now, that's kind of how you see where we're angling for in the future. I think that's where you can start to see the patterns emerge. So I can't speak directly to them, but I encourage everyone to take a look at our current lineup and sort of extrapolate from there what you will.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that lineup in a different way, because you already sort of kind of went this direction a little bit, right? NISA has this rather new and interesting partnership with SNK, and you've talked about how you released SNK Heroines. Plus, we have the highly anticipated, and I'm going to say this personally, I'm really, really, really looking forward to this, the highly anticipated SNK 40th Anniversary Collection coming up very soon.
Oh, yeah.
How did the relationship with SNK come to be?
Really, it kind of actually predates my time at NIS. I know that sort of... It's kind of interesting to always watch this, even from an insider. But the way that the working relationships happen in Japan is almost on like a totally different scale. You do get to know a lot of people around the industry through various different connections. I myself enjoy knowing people from various different companies like Namco and Sega and EA and other things, mostly through people who I've worked with in the past who go on to work at other places, and you continue these professional relationships. In Japan, it is obviously an island nation of 140 million people, but it is sort of geographically small. So a lot of times there are these circles that people travel in, the Osaka development circle, the Tokyo development circle, etc. And I know that especially at our highest level, Mr. Yamashita, who is our CEO, is basically, he's very well known in the industry. He is friends with kind of everyone. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that he was able to get in contact with these guys from SNK and begin a conversation about upcoming titles. And these things are typically, years in advance of anything happening. And obviously when they originally start out, it's just kind of a get to know you situation, and it may not ever turn into anything. I think you could line entire books of history about the industry in half deals that never got done, right? So a couple of years ago, the conversations began. They start talking about upcoming titles. They talk about their slate. Obviously, at this point, SNK is a brand that is kind of rebuilding from a long period of sort of smaller development, right? So up until 2001, then there was the sort of rebranding, and then they sort of became SNK Playmore for a while, and all these things. And then basically around the time they started working on KOF 14 was like a huge began this huge sort of rebuild process for them. And sort of off the success of KOF 14, we started getting to know them. And so I think that I oftentimes credit our CEO with his sort of excellent relationships and his great salesmanship attitude that is credited as a huge success to how we are able to get such high quality titles.
So are you yourself a fan of the older SNK games? And if so, what are you looking forward to playing?
Oh, absolutely. I've actually been a huge fan of their ACA hamster titles that they've been releasing on Switch. I picked up like Waku Waku 7, Magical Drop 3. I mean, I'm literally wearing the Fangamer Metal Slug hoodie right now. I am a big SNK fan. It was hugely, it was a real honor to be able to work with them on a title for a series that I have been a huge fan since KOF 96. You know, I get real flustered by this, but I am such like a big SNK nerd, and it's been so much fun to work with them and be part of this really cool like rebirth of the brand.
I'm going to jump right in and just tell you that 94, 95, and 96 were my favorite years on that.
I gotta maybe jump in and argue that 98 was kind of.
Ooh, 98's good too.
98's so good, so dang good.
But see, I'm an old man. Okay, so my like time. Yeah, I am. Can you hear it in my voice? I go back to like earlier titles than that for the things that I really love. But when it came to KOF, I was like, oh man, this is just so good, and it brings back these great memories for me during that period of time. And by the time like 97, 98 came out, I was still playing, but I wasn't quite playing those as much anymore. But you know, if we get out of the KOF era, if we don't talk about that, because there's a million titles from them that are just so awesome. Metal Slug is insane. I mean, you're talking about wearing the hoodie, and Metal Slug just brings back these amazing memories. And I still kick that up myself, but I want to go back into one of the titles that they're actually a series of titles that they're putting into the anniversary collection, Ikari Warriors.
Yes, of course.
I'm
related to roughly both now, sort of after all this time, related to Metal Slug and through KOF through Ralph and Clark.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's really cool. Ikari Warriors is on there, of course. We actually have basically all versions of Ikari, so it's both the arcade and the US version, the arcade and the console version, the US and the Japanese version. And for the arcade version, it actually has options, so all the dip switches that wouldn't have been available in the arcade for those machines. So things like in Ikari 2, turning on or off PvP, depending on how much Battletoads you want to go with your friends.
That is going to be fantastic. And you guys are supporting online play with that, right?
It's actually just local play.
Oh,
so just local for that one. But there are some really cool functionality related to that. One of the things that I recommend people checking out is Fangamer's Flip Grip, which is a way to orient your Switch vertically. And we're one of the first titles to natively support this functionality. So you can play all of our titles vertically by turning the Switch sideways and being able to fill up more of that screen, because much like a lot of those titles, like Ikari in the arcades, were played on these long vertical cabinets as opposed to sort of the 4x3 that most people are familiar with.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That I can't recommend that series enough. It's just a blast. Victory Road is great. You know, really, you guys are firing on all cylinders when it comes to this particular partnership. But I'm gonna let Cyrix get into the next thing, because I know he's probably chomping at the bit for this one.
You're done being giddy for a little bit?
I can't help it. This is good stuff.
So we can't mention SNK without mentioning fighters.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So we've seen a large number of fighters popping up on Switch, but recently we've seen developers creating them with characters from their own games, like an amalgamation of all their characters cameoing into a single game. Has NIS ever thought to dabble in a fighting genre for the library, from their library of characters?
You know, they're actually really, really open to the idea of guesting with a lot of the library. So that's never really been an issue. I think the issue, generally speaking, is that fighting game development is a very it's a very specific skill set, right? And I don't think there's anybody necessarily on staff who is really into fighting game development or understands fighting game development. So while I would not ever say that it's outside the realm of possibility to see NIS characters appear in a fighting game, I would hold your breath. I wouldn't hold your breath regarding NIS developing a fighting game.
Well, you have this wonderful new partnership with people that are pretty familiar with fighting games.
I know one or two.
So before we escape the area of kind of game development, there is one other question I had, and this is the one that I moved a little bit because we were in such a groove talking about the others. I did want to ask, are there any challenges with regards to the localization of games that you guys have been able to bring over to the U.S.?
There's always the challenge of localization. I think it sort of fits under the rules of the threes. You can do something either fast, good, or cheap. Pick two, right?
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be that struggle. We want to produce the best localization that we can for our titles. We also want to make sure that our titles come out in a timely fashion. We don't want people waiting over a year in the difference between the release in Japan and release in North America and Europe. We are also expanding our localization to French. So a lot of our major titles you may have seen, things like Labyrinth of Refrain and Disgaea 1 Complete, also came in French. And so as we continue to improve and invest in our localization staff, there are still a lot of challenges to overcome. I think that I don't want to talk about it too much, but I know that this is a lot of ways related to how Ys 8 was released last year, and we have made huge strides since then, and definitely looked to how to fix that situation and implemented great changes internally to ensure that our thing is about accessibility and making sure that we have the most authentic experience translated of those original titles to an English-speaking and French-speaking audience.
I know that the challenges, the differences between the regions, there's a lot that plays into that, right? Because there's culture differences, there's language intricacies, things that don't come across in one language as they might in another. So it's a translation or localization isn't necessarily just saying, here are the words that this person said. You can't really just do that. It has a tone, it has a story driving aspect to it. So
there's a lot of, I would say that there's a lot of interpretation that goes into this idea of translation, localization. And I think that if you give a set of materials to 3 different translators, 3 different editors, that you will get sort of 3 different similar, but 3 different takes on how that could probably best be conveyed. It happens more in Japanese than, say, another Latin or Romantic language. I think our languages are similar enough from, say, English to Spanish to Italian that you can make those transitions fairly easily, mostly dealing with grammar, and what really winds up being different in Japanese is usually related to not both sort of grammatical rules and then also some pretty big differences in culture.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Japanese in particular maybe a little bit more challenging.
So we're gonna kind of shift gears here for this last segment of questions here, because we've gone so far into this development world and games themselves, but let's kind of talk about some other aspects here, because a good number of the collectors out there are enamored with the little collectibles and add-ins that you guys feature within your collector's editions. So we're kind of curious what goes into the selection of what you put into those editions.
So one of the things that we start with here is a sort of kickoff party with the talks between the people who are working on the game, the translators and localization staff, and then the design staff, the people who are going to make the items, and then marketing is also pulled in as well as the producers. So it is sort of a meeting of all the different minds inside the company, the people who both know the market very well, know craftsmanship very well, know the title very well, and we start spitballing a bunch of different ideas about what can we do, what can we fit in, basically what hits the budget, which is always, of course, a big part of this. And this is not just limited to the things that we put in, say like the EZ Adventures Edition, which did have pack ends, but also our limited edition that we sell off of our store page, which we put a lot of effort into, and I put a huge amount of our success and praise that we've received for those directly on our designers. They've done really incredible stuff. It is a very community-based process. I've put stuff in my ideas myself. And a lot of times we sort of split the responsibilities, that the people who suggest the idea oftentimes have to go chasing down for quotes from vendors about costs and stuff. If you have a great idea, that's great, but you put in your work too.
Is it safe to say that if NIS is putting out a game, there's probably going to be a special edition available for it?
Traditionally, that's the case. I would say that in certain cases, depending on what our expected goals are for a certain title or how we're handling that title, we may or may not receive a special edition. Most of the cases, I would say yes, about 90% of the time we do have a special edition. You also may notice that we also have special editions for other titles as well. Some of our partner titles that we've done for Koei, like Harvest Moon, those were special editions that were actually produced by NIS, or rather NIS America. Since
we've turned to more of the collector side of, I'd like to ask about the internal cover art or reversible covers and inserts like instruction manuals. Can we hope to see more of this? Because games that were published like Happy Birthdays had a book, Labyrinth of Refrain and Disgaea 5 had reversible covers, but other games like Fallen Legions and God War is just nothing. It was just white with the legal tag.
It depends a lot about our scheduling and our budgeting, but yeah, we tend to want to do reversible cover sheets. I recommend everybody try to follow us on social media, because we will announce before, and we typically have contests. We don't just usually put a reversible cover sheet in. We typically open it up for people on polls. We try to get what the fans want to see. I would also recommend checking out our websites for Disgaea 1 and for Labyrinth. You can actually go to the website and print out your own alternative cover sheets that were not selected by the fans, but fans obviously wanted them, so we made them available through other means.
Go ahead and give everybody the @ and the website address.
Yeah, we're at NIS America, and I think our Facebook is NIS America Inc. Oh, and the websites. I think it's Disgaea.us is the Disgaea homepage, but you can find everything that's associated with our different things at nisamerica.com.
Just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to visit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have there been any collector's editions where you guys were unable to add some collectibles that were originally planned, or can you tell us if there was some stuff that you wanted to do that you didn't get to do with those?
Yeah, so obviously we go through a pretty rote process of throwing out basically any idea that anybody has at the beginning, and then eventually voting them down into sort of a more predictable, or not predictable, but more sensible, I guess, or just sort of getting the idea of what the group kind of wants from it. I would say that of the most recent stuff, I'd maybe go with Disgaea 1, because that was a big conversation. Obviously, a lot of people had plenty to say about such a sort of a classic entry. And there were a lot of different ideas out there that included things like Laharl's scarf, but that was kind of seen as being like, well, it's just a big long red scarf. Like how much can you really do with it? There's not anything particularly authentic about that, or maybe just a T-shirt with like his torso on it, which is like sort of just a bare chest, but it's really thin. Things like that idea. There's a bunch of different printing stuff that came through until we eventually got into the idea of like the printing cube. So it's like a square printing plush. That was actually something that we wanted to do beforehand, and then never really found a place for it. And then when we realized we were doing Disgaea 1 Complete, said, "Oh, this is the perfect place for having that." Originally, it was going to be 6 coasters, but that really kind of got the kibosh because the coasters were a great idea, but they incorporated too many different types of Pernies, specifically Pernies outside of Disgaea 1. So if you want the full set, we have the 3 that are in the D1C, which is Big Sis, Curtis Perny, and Standard Perny. And then the ones for the extended set are Hero Perny, Usalia's Perny from D5C, that's the yellow Perny, and a 6th one that will remain a mystery because I can't recall it.
That's okay. I mean, so the live pony in that you were going to pack into Harvest Moon just was a no-go. Couldn't do it.
No, though it was kind of, that one in particular was kind of funny because a late stage addition suddenly was, so we have all these chocolate cows, sort of these brown cow plushes, and we just don't know. I'm like, oh god, there's no space in the box, and we managed to ship them out with them, but yeah, I will say for Disgaea 1 Complete, just real quick, there is one item that I hope defines my enduring legacy, and that is the Etna NoPi mousepad.
Yes, we're all familiar with the mouse pads.
And this one in particular is not an OPi mousepad; it's a NoPi mousepad. It's completely flat.
Yes,
it's funny that you mentioned the chocolate cows, because in our Discord server for the community, the chocolate cow was so popular that Soul actually had to make an emote of the chocolate cow.
I did.
I love hearing that. It was it's one of those things that's like, yeah, it's a challenge because it's being brought in pretty late in the process, but it's one of those things where you look at it and go, well, this has to happen.
The chocolate cow is a particular favorite. That is for sure.
Yeah, and we were just discussing Prinny a little bit ago, actually, and I was talking about the shirts that are on your site and how badly I want the shirt that's like free shrugs, dude. I love that.
Oh yeah, free shrugs. Free shrugs is great. It's kind of funny in any given part of the day, depending on the sort of the veteran status of the employee, you can usually spot at least 2 or 3 different Prinny shirts from the last 15 years and someone on the office.
So your collector's editions are sold exclusively through your own website if we ignore the secondary market, of course. So what was the deciding factor behind doing that as opposed to letting retail shops offer the multiple editions of your games?
Well, the most expensive or the most value that any retail space has is space. So the thing that is sort of most important to them, the thing that is most precious to them, is how much space they can allocate towards a title or towards a product comparative to the rest of the store. For that reason, getting in limited edition games into stores, while previously was seen as fairly easy or more accessible, has definitely become more difficult over time. In addition, so the idea is that, number one, retailers don't want so many limited editions anymore. That's a big one. I'd say the number 2 for us is being able to control a lot of the factors that go into how they're displayed and how they're sold. We control a lot of the things from our own distribution warehouses. So having that sort of quality control over our own product is pretty important to us. I would say, thirdly, it allows us to get away with a lot of stuff in regards to what we put in there and whatever we feel like we want to put in. We don't have to really be withholden to certain conditions and things if we handle it ourselves. That being said, we do offer some of our limited editions, have in the past, and probably will continue to in some limited format in the future, eventually do make their way to retail. For instance, the upcoming Liar Princess and the Blind Prince, that will be sold exclusively as a limited edition into retail.
Yeah, I think we've seen the listing for that on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've already pre-ordered it.
Same.
Thank you.
So that leads me into like the next question is that we have seen publishers Most specifically comes to mind is Square, who have offered some of their standard edition available only through their website, like they did with Lost Sphere. Is there anything that NIS has thought about as well, or maybe even partnering with a retail chain to offer some exclusive item just to them or on their site?
We've done that in the past. Occasionally we're offered by certain retailers, and they will request that we have something special for them, or they encourage us to come and proposition them with an idea of something specific they can get in return. This is a lot of times depending on the location. So I think that it's most effective in certain markets like in France and Germany, though we have seen stuff in Canada, and we've even done a couple of US ones as well in the past. I will say that retail is a continuously evolving platform that we have to address in a case-by-case basis sort of as everything changes, because everything continues to change.
So it looks like in 2019, we're definitely going to see some great stuff ahead from NIS America. I'm personally looking forward to RPG Maker MV and a few of the others you guys have announced already. Do you want to kind of expand on that at all? And maybe if even if it's extremely vague, maybe give us a little hint for our listeners on and viewers of what else might be in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'd love to pull the curtain back a little bit and sort of explain that when it comes to Japanese companies in particular, always look towards sort of their Q1 offerings, because the way that this is sort of more business and wonky-ish, but the way that stuff is calculated in terms of revenue by company depends a lot about how you report, and that changes depending typically on where the company is headquartered. So Japanese headquartered companies report in April, which is the beginning of the fiscal year for Japanese companies. This is different for different companies, American companies, French companies. I think these all sort of have varying different things that slide between December and April, or October and April, I think. And so it's always really interesting to look at, and I'm speaking more broadly, not based on NIS America, but just as a fan of the industry and following different companies. But it's always really interesting to watch, say, like when Capcom, what they're doing in the Q1, because they oftentimes like to release those big titles right in sort of that February and March category, mostly because, again, they're Japanese, so they don't really deal with that big push it out of Q3 for the Christmas thing that we do. Mm-hmm. As for our slate, we are in the middle, of course, of our release cycle, although we have done most of the major releases for the rest of the year. We are still pushing behind Labyrinth of Refrain to Sky One Complete. For next year, we are really excited about a lot of those titles. Working directly with Kadokawa, not Kadokawa Games, but Kadokawa, which is a different entity. It's complicated. But for RPG Maker MV, we, of course, released Fez last year for the 3DS. MV is the first sort of mainline title. So people who are familiar with RPG Maker will know that MV released as Trinity on the PC, and we're bringing the console version, MV, that's PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One. I'm actually really happy to announce that the creation software versus the player, which is called the Maker Player, that Maker Player has cross-platform functionality. So from a Switch, you'll be able to actually play games created on the Xbox One version of the game. So that's really cool.
That's amazing. Great. I've been dabbling in RPG Maker since I was in high school, and I've all the iterations leading up into the current form, and I'm super excited about that. Now I just gotta figure out a way to design a game in RPG Maker and then get a publishing company to actually publish it for me.
Yeah, that's kind of the big one. What's really great here for the console versions is that each version, including the Switch version, has native USB keyboard support. So it's going to be a lot easier than Fez's sort of cumbersome touchpad entry. I will say that it sort of brings all the utility of the most recent version, including the multi-view, which is the ability to play. I mean, previous RPG Maker games have been played in this sort of Dragon Quest front view, and this allows you to do a Final Fantasy style side-by-side view. So that's a big first for the series, and it really is just as easy as flipping a switch.
What about some of the other titles that you guys are bringing in some of the stuff we've seen?
So some of the other stuff, which we announced back in Anime Expo this year would be The Princess Guide, which was released in Japan by our head office under the title Your Four Knights Princesses Training Story, which is just a little too much for us. So when we took it, we came up with the title The Princess Guide. It is a spiritual sequel to Penny Punching Princess that we released on Switch earlier this year. In it, you play as the titular Princess Guide, guiding four different princesses on their own, each with their own storyline, and sort of combines this sort of meta strategy game with the point-to-point brawler mechanics, the sort of top-down brawler mechanics that were present in Penny Punching. We also have, of course, RPG Maker, and then after that, we'll have Liar Princess and the Blind Prince, which, like I mentioned before about Yomawari, was the most recent recipient of the Inside Indies contest at NIS. And then we also, of our announced titles, we also have the Caligula Effect Overdose. So the Caligula Effect was a title that was released last year by Atlas on Vita, just for Vita, just digitally. A lot of people got it, thought it was pretty good, but thought maybe that it was a little hamstringed by the technical restraints. So they released an updated version in Japan called Caligula Overdose, which was for the PS4. We think this title is really great. It's got a lot of potential. It's made by great staff, like the former writer of Persona 1 and Persona 2. We want to see this thing really take off. So when we took on the title from Fujio, we told them, okay, but we want to bring it to Switch. We want to bring it to PC. So we've taken the effort to make sure that this works on the Switch and is coming in spring as well.
That's fantastic.
So if you're a little bit bummed, that Persona hasn't made its way to Switch yet, this is made by the father of Persona and shares a lot of that same approach with a really cool, totally different combat system, but with a real focus on that subversive philosophy under the guise of high school life.
We know how loved the Persona series itself is, and the boy, that's just got a lot of loyalty to it. So anything attached to that, I'm sure, will do well anyways. And coming from similar producers, directors, writers, etc., is a huge boon to another game when it has that kind of connection. Typically, for normal interviews, this would kind of be the end, but we like to do one other question. We always kind of throw out a bonus question. In most cases, has almost literally nothing to do with anything we've talked about to this point. So,
got me on the edge of my seat.
Yes. So I had the joy of writing this particular question because usually Cyrix does it. But this time I had an opportunity, so I did this one. I am originally from Southern California. I grew up in Long Beach.
Okay.
I currently live in Indiana. Long story. I've been in Indiana for about 12 and a half years. But when you are raised in Southern California, that never leaves, right? So
yeah.
The question is, in the everlasting debate about which franchise has the best burger around, can you explain why the answer is In-N-Out and no other?
This is really tough. This is a little tougher for me, not only because I was born bred Southern California myself, Manhattan Beach, but I also have a lot of family in Texas, home of Whataburger.
Whataburger.
Yeah. So I gotta tread carefully on this question, but honestly, it is a bit of the people bring out that question, right? Is it In-N-Out? Is it Whataburger? Is it Shake Shack? And I actually did go this year and have my first Shake Shack shake and burger. And I gotta say, while they have probably the taste beat, In-N-Out delivers the full package. Basically, you get out of you get an In-N-Out and you get out of In-N-Out in a fast time with a good burger, and your pockets are not too light. And that's really the big difference for me is that I go to Shake Shack, okay, that's $20 for a meal. I go to In-N-Out, that's $7. So, you can if you're a money bags, just always going for that top end, that's there for you. But for In-N-Out, you can't beat the full package.
I appreciate that answer.
I've not eaten at any of those 3 establishments.
No, you get White Castle as the answer for you, right?
No.
Is that DQ country out there?
We do have DQ, but really, I mean, if you're looking for like the gourmet type burger establishments, we have stuff like Red Robin, and we have like Smash Burger and stuff. But
we got Red Robin back in California too, but I think the equivalent is Five Guys.
Five Guys is I don't even get started on how much Five Guys, but the we used to have like GD Ritzy's in this area, and that was really good. And there's like 1 or 2 left. And they're trying to bring them back, I think, in Ohio or something right now. But we don't the local establishment. Like if you come to this part of Kentucky, which is like the Lexington area, we have a place called Tally Ho, and Tally Ho is if you want a greasy burger at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's Tally Ho is not to be beat.
Yikes.
Any final thoughts, burger related or otherwise? Anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
As I mentioned before, just sort of briefly, we do owe a lot of our success of last year, which was a record-breaking year for NIS, to how quickly we've been accepted and embraced by the Switch community. For that, we really, really, really do thank every single one who has picked up a title on the Switch. It was sort of a rather risky proposition at the beginning, but we had a lot of faith behind it, and it has paid off tenfold. And we're really, really, honestly thankful for each and every Switch fan we have out there.
Well, we are thankful for you and your company's offerings. I can tell you that we have a lot of fans, particularly in our Discord, that are on top of every single collector's edition that you guys put out for the Switch. Every single. We know multiple people that truly actually own every single collector's edition from NIS America.
Incredible.
It really is.
And we know a couple that when they miss one, they usually have 2 of another collector's edition, and they go on a rampant run to try to find somebody to trade with.
Do you want to give me the real inside scoop?
Sure.
If you see a title and it says sold out, pay really close attention right around about a month to the point of release, because some people, they order and then they cancel, or their credit card comes back incorrect or something like that. And occasionally in that sort of launch area, we do open up a couple more units. So if somebody out there has missed one, please make sure you're watching that page, because it will just sort of sneak up. We don't usually typically put that out there. We don't usually say, a couple more units of such and such just became more available, but it does happen. So if people miss out, do not fret. There is oftentimes a little bit of a chance.
It's a good tip. I hope everybody's paying attention. Well, again, Travis, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and to give our listeners and these Switch fans, a lot of really, really insightful information. And we've really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah. Soul, Cyrix, it has been an absolute honor.
We would love at some point in the future to have you back, and I'm going to let Cyrix talk in a second.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to not referring to the Princess Guide as the prince. I'm going to refer to it as the Japanese name.
It needs more words. It's not long enough.
Backfired again.
If you can fit it on the spine of the Switch case, it's not.
Again, thanks for stopping by, and we hope to have you on again at some point in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Travis again for joining us. It was a real treat to get to talk to him especially, but anybody from NIS America. is great. But I'm really glad that we got to talk to Travis. It was definitely a treat for us.
Yeah, I agree. Boy, he was super knowledgeable. You could tell he's been in the industry for a long time and just knew what to share and how to share it and really get that excitement flowing. Plus, he was super informative. I really, really had a good time with him.
So that can bring us to our next topic of discussion here. We got the first round of additional titles added to the Switch Online service, and those titles were Solomon's Key, Super Dodgeball, NES Open, and the new version of Zelda, which is Zelda SP, which is kind of like a throw-in. Nobody really saw that coming. So that's probably the one that we could really discuss the most. But have you had a chance to play all these? I know we played Super Dodgeball together, but have you had a chance to play the others?
No, I really haven't. I haven't focused on it. I did kind of, do my research and check out the SP, because obviously that surprised everybody. I think the SP stood for surprise, really. A lot of people didn't see that coming, but I don't really know how I feel about it in a certain sense, because for those of you that don't really know, the SP version of Zelda basically gives you almost everything that you need in the game. Fills up your hearts with all of them, gives you all these weapons. It starts you off with just basically a massive leap forward in the game, as if you are ready to dive right in and fight Ganon.
I think it only starts you with like 6 or 8 hearts.
No, I thought it filled up the entire world of hearts. Was it only 6 or 8?
6 or 8, yeah. It you had the power bracelet, the candle, 255 rupees, Master Sword, but I think you only had like 6 or 8 hearts.
Let's face it. You get a huge jump start.
And I feel like I know where you're going with the idea behind it is, and I know plenty of people subscribe to the same thought process, is that this is basically hand-holding a hard Nintendo game.
Well, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
I also just think it takes away from how you should feel from playing the game. I mean, ultimately, the game is, in the early stages, is a struggle, and it's purposefully a struggle. It's made to be difficult. It's a quest. It's a big, giant quest that you have to start with nothing. You literally start the game with nothing in the original version. You have to go pick up a sword, and it's a wooden sword.
It's dangerous to go alone.
Yeah. From that, you explore, you hunt, you try to figure out, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? I have no clue. I have no idea as I'm starting this game, but eventually I get better. I start to find and discover things. I get more weapons and items like a candle, etc., to free up more areas. I can start to move boulders. And
that is another thing that the SP version did, was all the burnable bushes with the secret doors, they were all open. Right.
So what you end up with in the original is just this epic quest of exploration and fighting and dungeons and all that. And then in the end, you beat it and you have an accomplishment. You've actually done it. And of course, then you have to do the second quest. But at the same time, the SP version takes a huge amount of that away. It's going to have nowhere near the same impact. Now, I don't necessarily think that it should go away. I don't think the SP version is bad for certain things, and I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because you can use it to do things like speed runs, and we talked about these ideas before, but it would be maybe better if it was available. My thinking was it shouldn't be available unless you've beaten Zelda.
Oh, so you're thinking kind of like the SNES Classic, how they gated Star Fox 2 behind requiring you to at least beat a level in Star Fox 1.
Yeah, except for this would be gated behind defeating Ganon.
Okay.
Once.
Yeah. So, but to make it clear though, I haven't researched past what I know about it here, but neither one of us have played through the SP, because they do say there is a harder version of SP after you beat it once. So I don't know what that entails, how it makes it harder at all, but so there is that also. So everything that we're talking about now is ignoring that, because we don't know exactly what that entails at the moment.
Well, it's so easy. I just played it while you were talking and beat it, and now I'm on the second quest already.
Wow, you're so good. And you're right. I'm leaning more towards the idea of speedrunning and stuff like that. But to be fair, I did call for some sort of ROM hack. I was hoping for randomizer. I was hoping for randomizer, and we even made the joke. We know you're listening to Nintendo. Give us the ROM hack, the randomizer. But this wasn't the one I was expecting. But anything is better than nothing, so I'll take it. And on top of that, it was a fourth game. If this had replaced one of the other 3 games, I might be a little bit more upset about it. But this was an unannounced fourth game, so
I'm not upset about it at all. I think it's great that they did it. I just kind of wish they did it differently is all. I mean, how cool would it be if nobody knew what it was? It was just there with like a question mark or something, and people were trying to figure out how to get to that, and then
entice people to play the other games.
Zelda.
You have to play all the way through NES Tennis to unlock this. It's like, no.
Okay, no. Now you're kind of getting into the other thing about what we've been doing with NES Online, because you and I have played a majority of the 2-player games that are in there, and experiences are mixed at best.
Yeah. Before we transition, though, I will say that I did play NES Open and Solomon's Key. And Solomon's Key is just exactly like I remember it. It's a neat little time sink, but a little frustrating with some of the enemies that are there. And NES Open, I'm just as horrible at as I ever was, so I'm always golfing into the rough. But I'll throw that out there. But yes, we did try a majority of the other games, and we did have a little bit of varying degrees of frustration and enjoyment. But I think in the end, we kind of agree on how it's playing out right now.
Well, I mean, there's two different areas of frustration. Okay,
yes.
The first is simply the online connectivity, right? The lag or stutter that can occur,
even when you turn
rubber banding.
Even when you turn low latency on, it doesn't really seem to help that much.
I would say we didn't really even notice much of a difference at all with that mode. And why not just make that the default? I don't know. Essentially, even when you were playing the games well, the connectivity issues were problematic with what it did, because it depended on who the host was. That would determine your screen's behavior. Yeah. So a lot of times I was the host, right? And we were playing things like, think about when we played baseball. So I'm sitting there pitching, you're getting ready to hit, and you'd hit, you'd see your guy start running just a little bit down the line, and boom, he snaps back and you've got a strike instead.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a tad bit annoying. Another thing I remember is when we played tennis, I would swing and hit the ball, and I'd see it go across the court, and then it would snap back, and I'd see it go across the court, and it would snap back, and I'd see it go across the court, and then they may return it, and then it snaps back, and they actually missed it, and it was a point. So it was just weird.
Yeah, the desynchronization that's happening. I guess this is the challenge, right? These games were not designed for network play at all, obviously. It would be neat to know how they're implementing the synchronization of these, because I would imagine they're sharing the variables and the timing and running the emulation in 2 spots at once, hence the snapback, where if anything gets out of sync on the second one, then that information is periodically resynchronized, which is what causes that snap to happen. But
yeah. And I've also spoken to other people who said that they've not experienced the same problems that we've had. So,
yeah.
But we had it far too often for it to just be randomly us.
Yeah. No, it can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe other folks just ended up with some pretty good connections and didn't experience that. And to be fair, we didn't experience that on every game we played. No. There were other games where we didn't have problems.
Yeah, we had minimal problems with Super Dodgeball, but we had next to no problems with Balloon Fight.
Yeah, Balloon Fight actually worked extremely well for us.
Yeah.
I would say of all the 2-player games we played, that was probably the smoothest experience we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then second to that probably would have been Pro Wrestling.
Yeah. We did notice a little stutter here and there, but that was still rather smooth.
Yeah, it was playable.
Now the other problem. The other problem is simply the game quality for the current game selection for 2-player games is extremely low. There are very, very few games that have decent quality for 2-player right now.
Yeah,
that are available.
And I'll go ahead and address this right now. Let me get in close here. Reggie, I know you're listening. Why don't we have Contra or Super C? Where's Contra Super C? Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with the quality of the 2-player games. And the sad part is that the announced games going forward, the 2 that I'm the most excited about are not multiplayer games. So even going forward, I don't really have a whole lot to look forward to in terms of quality of the multiplayer, because Metroid and Ninja Gaiden are going to be the best games in the next 2 packs, unless there's a 4th unannounced game again, which there could be. Maybe we get Battletoads. That'd be kind of neat. But I mean, they'd have to deal with Rare to do that, I understand. So that's a long shot, but it's still possible. We have a good relationship with Microsoft right now, so maybe, fingers crossed. Yeah. But yeah, right now we're not really looking at. We're looking at good games, but we're not looking at good multiplayer games, which is what online is supposed to give us.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, like we got better at tennis. We won 2 games instead of 1 game the second time we played.
Yeah, but the problem with that though is, are we getting better because our connection wasn't as bad, or are we compensating better for the bad connections to the point that if we didn't have any lag, we would be terrible again?
I don't really want to look a gift horse in the mouth.
You're just going to take your extra win and pack it up?
That's right. But honestly, we're probably not going to play much more of those particular games online. I just don't see it.
Maybe Balloon Fight as a time killer or something.
Well, it's essentially Joust, right?
Yeah,
so
it's essentially Joust. So
you know, that's a fun time for all. But
maybe Balloon Fight, and I'm always up for challenges in Super Dodgeball. But
now I'm going to say it. I did beat you in the first match.
You did, absolutely. I will 100% admit that.
I think the only time that I beat you.
That is true, and I'm not even going to make excuses about it, because I have a perfectly logical reason behind why you were able to beat me. But I'm just going to say you beat me, and that's all there is to it. I'm not making any excuses. You did, in fact, beat me. So
I did once.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Man, we had this incredible opportunity this month to talk to not just one entity with NIS America. We had the chance to talk to a second one. We got Tyler Hogle from Screaming Villains to join us. So why don't we take a listen to that interview?
We'd like to welcome to the podcast Tyler Hogle from Screaming Villains. We appreciate you coming out and giving us some time to talk about you bringing some games to the Switch and the new stuff you got coming out here pretty soon. So thanks for coming on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. I assume you have a love for Night Trap, obviously. But before we get into that, can you tell us a bit about your earliest memories of gaming?
My earliest one, I guess, is the same as a lot of people. Super Mario Brothers. That's the earliest one I can remember, and probably the first game I played. I think I was about 6 years old at my grandma's house, and I want to say it was what year was it? I guess that would have been about 88, 89, something like that. But yeah, Mario's what got me into it, like a lot of people around my age.
So did you always have a love for full motion video games from that era, from when they came out?
Yeah, I feel like with full motion video, it's like a love-hate thing. It's like you either get it or you don't. I guess you just have to appreciate, like, I guess, B horror films. And I don't know, like at the time, I guess I got into it at the right age. Cause I mean, if I was seeing a FMV game for the very first time now, I probably wouldn't like it as much. But as a teenager, when I'm like in middle school and seeing that for the first time on Sega CD, it's like, whoa, man, because it was a new thing and it kind of blew you away because it was like games weren't really doing that at the time. So I think if I was older, I probably wouldn't appreciate it as much. I think it just got me at the right age.
How did you get involved in game development?
It kind of started as a hobby. Like I messed around with it in high school, and then the plan was, all right, after school, I'm gonna go to college and then learn how to make video games. But I made the mistake of, well, after high school, I'm gonna take a year off and then go back. That doesn't always work. It didn't work in my case. So then, and then after that, I started playing in bands by accident, and then did that for several years, and then kind of, program stuff on the side, just something to do. Wasn't trying to be serious about it or anything. And then that was kind of like when the whole internet thing really blew up, and like everyone wanted a website. So I started getting into HTML programming and then building websites for people, and charging a ridiculous amount of money, because at that time you could get away with that because nobody really knew how to build them. And then I want to say around my 10-year high school reunion, a bunch of people I hadn't seen in years since high school started tracking me down on Facebook. And then one of my really good friends from high school that I hadn't really talked to, and I think it was at like 8 years at that point, he tracked me down, and he was working at Activision and at Infinity Ward specifically, working on the Modern Warfare games. And then he was like, how come you're not doing video games? That was what you always talked about in high school, and I didn't talk about it at all, and I'm doing it. And I'm just like, oh, that's a really good way to make me feel like a degenerate, but I don't know. It just didn't happen that way. And then we stayed in contact after that, and then he was constantly trying to push me into getting back into programming and doing video games and stuff like that. And then at this point, I was stuck in call center hell for like several years. That's one of those jobs that you get stuck in very easily because it pays good money, but you don't really go anywhere in it. And then my last call center job, I got laid off, and then was sitting around getting unemployment. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start getting into this and try to do it seriously. And then came up with a simple game idea and just jumped right in and started learning as I went. And then eventually it led to Night Trap, and that's pretty much it, really.
So all that kind of like homegrown learning where you're picking it up as you go, you're researching it. You didn't like sit there listening to a talking head in a classroom. Right.
Yeah, it was basically like I just came up with a really simple idea to start with, just to kind of learn, and then whenever I needed to do a specific thing, I would just get on YouTube or hop on Google and try to find a tutorial. And then, I mean, what I was doing, none of it made any sense at all. And then one day it just clicked, and I got it.
Yeah, you probably went about it the right way, because I went straight to college from high school and majored in computer science and learned how to program, and now I program for a living, and I want to like beat my head against my desk most days. So
I've heard that from a few people. Like, there's another guy I know that that went to school for programming, and then he came over and I was showing him some stuff I was working on, and then he started asking me like general questions like, can you explain an integer and a float and all this, really basic stuff. And then he was all like, wow, I learned more from you in 5 minutes than I did in 2 weeks at college.
Oh, it was rough. So, what is your all-time favorite platform? As the FMV genre seemed to really take off on the Sega CD, what is your actual favorite platform of all time?
I would probably have to go. It goes back and forth between the original Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Genesis.
Ooh, the Sega Genesis. Wow.
Little 8-bit versus 16-bit battling going on there.
I think Genesis probably has my all-time favorite games on it, but there's more games on Nintendo that I like.
So okay, you touched on it. What's your favorite then from the Genesis?
It's either Shinobi 3 or Vector Man.
Ooh, Vector Man.
Vector Man is sweet.
I would say
Vector Man doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, Vector Man was really. I saw somebody mentioning that the other day on Reddit. Actually,
I did.
Did you?
I mentioned it in Discord the other day.
No, I saw somebody on Reddit trying to figure out the tip of the joystick subreddit where they have to figure out what game they can't remember. That somebody brought up Vector Man there. That's awesome.
Well, visually that was a hell of a game back in the day.
It was. I remember playing it. I remember playing it standing up at a Toys R Us at the kiosk. Yeah. So
I remember they had that contest where if you beat the game, then at the very end it would give a 1-800 number to where you can win $250,000. I rented that game from Blockbuster and beat the hell out of it that weekend, and I was so disappointed that the phone number didn't show up.
So from what I understand, you were able to recreate the game on Android, and some footage was uploaded to show it running. But why mobile and why Night Trap?
It kind of started as a joke, honestly. Like, what happened was that Night Trap had that Kickstarter that was a complete disaster and it failed. And then right around that time, like right after that, a bunch of fans started trying to recreate Night Trap themselves. And then there was like a really brief period where every time a new fan-made version of Night Trap came up, a bunch of gaming websites started covering it. And I was like, this is silly. Why are they doing this? Like covering fan-made projects for Night Trap. And then a friend of mine was all like, dude, you should like the other thing about these remakes that people were making was that none of them even worked. And then, so then a friend of mine was all like, dude, you should recreate yourself and upload it online. And I was all like, dude, that's awesome. We can kind of possibly troll gaming websites too, because we'll upload it anonymously and make them think it's a legitimate thing. So then I sat at my computer for like, I want to say it took me 3 days. And then I recreated disc 1 because Night Trap was split up across 2 discs on the original version. So it was like the first 13, 14 minutes of the game that I recreated. And then I just did it on mobile just because, I can get it quick and get it up and running very quickly and then record a video of me playing it. And then so I did that in like 3 days and then uploaded it to YouTube, and that was pretty much it, really. But no gaming websites covered it, unfortunately. I think like 2 of them did. Like, I want to say it was FMV World and Sega Bits, but that was enough to get the word out about it because I think it ended up getting like 5,000 views within the first 24 hours, which was more than I thought it would get.
Now, if I understand correctly, you ended up having a phone call with Tom Zito, the producer on Night Trap, and that happened shortly after your video went up, right? So can you share with us a little bit about what happened on that call, and did you get the impression that he was impressed or flattered at all?
So yeah, what happened was after the video went up, Sega Bits, they contacted Tom Zito directly by email, asking if he knew any information about this. And of course, his response was, I'm not involved with this, never even seen it before, don't even know anything about it. And then FMV World contacted Rob Fulop, who was also one of the owners of Night Trap. And I think he was he's also the co-creator, and then he kind of programmed it as well. So FMV World emailed Rob Fulop about it. And then his response was that, I'm of 2 minds of this. I think it's really cool that someone did this. And I feel people should be able to play Night Trap since it's basically lost to time because you can only play it if you have a Sega CD. And then his other response was that the other issue is that this person doesn't own this. He needs to contact the owners of Night Trap. So I was like, okay, just from that quote, it sounds like they're interested. So I tracked down Tom Zito's email, which was surprisingly easy. And then so then I sent him an email at about, I want to say it was like 3 a.m. And then 3 a.m. my time. I think it was like midnight in his, because he's in San Francisco. So then I got a response back within 15 minutes, which I was not expecting at all. And then he just kind of asked a couple of general questions about it. Was like, how did you do this? What's the file size? How long did it take to do it? Where did I get the video? And then he asked me for my phone number. I was like, yeah, totally. Here's my phone number. Give me a call whenever. And he's like, cool. I'll call you at 3 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow afternoon, which was like 12 hours from when he emailed me. Then next day, sure enough, at exactly 3 o'clock, he called me. And then we talked for about, it probably wasn't even 5 minutes. And then he basically just kind of asked the same questions that he asked over email, and I gave him more detailed answers instead of brief ones. And then he was like, so what do you want to do with this? And I was like, well, I mean, if I could release it officially, that'd be rad. And he's all like, all right, we need to set you up with a licensing agreement. Let's make this happen. And so, yeah, he offered Night Trap to me within 5 minutes of the phone call. Yeah, and it wasn't even 24 hours after I emailed him. It was less than a day.
Wow. Have you been in contact with Tom since? And if so, what does he think about the subsequent re-releases?
Oh, yeah, I talk to Tom pretty frequently, at least once a week. Have been for about 2 years now. He was generally surprised. I mean, because he wasn't his feeling was that with the Kickstarter, with how bad it did, he was under the impression that a lot of people didn't care about Night Trap and nobody really wanted it. And then, so once the game was finally announced, he was pretty surprised by the reaction it got. So he was definitely happy with it. It was pretty surprising because, I kind of suspected that would happen, but I didn't think it would get as big as it did. Like we're on, like me and my friend that actually the one that suggested making it and uploading it to YouTube. He was, we were both, just reading news articles and reading people's reactions that day and watching reaction videos on YouTube. And then we're all like, holy shit, we're trending in the top 10 on YouTube and we're ranked higher than Gucci Mane, the rapper. It was like, that was kind of funny to us.
Yeah. Night Trap has a very, very big cult following. It's
It's got a very hardcore cult following, which I didn't know until I got involved with all this.
Yeah. So the original source code for the game was lost, but the timed master footage was available. So taking that, you had to play through the game several times to get a feel for how to organize everything properly. How many times did you have to complete the game? And was there a point in which you started to feel a regret having to do this undertaking?
I didn't have to play through it very much, to be honest with you. Like, cause what I did was when I made that original version, there was a free program online that some fan made that allows you to load a digital pictures disc and rip all the video directly from the disc. Because they use, like, the digital picture games, they use like an SGA file format. But with Night Trap specifically, this is the only game that was set up like this out of all of them. Was that all the file names, each file was a different video. They were each one was named with a series of numbers, and then after kind of staring at the numbers for a while, I figured out what they were. And what it was that the way they were labeled was it had the minute that the video played, the exact second, and then the exact frame number. And on that game, it was 30 frames per second. So I was able to get the actual times for when the video played directly off the file names.
Aside from what you've already worked on and announced is currently working on, is there any other FMV that you'd like to see get brought to the modern market? Like maybe another Zito game like Sewer Shark?
Sewer Shark, I definitely want to happen, because that seems like one that a lot of people are asking for. It's just the problem with Sewer Shark is that I have access to the video. It's just some of it's missing. And that's the only one that's really missing any video. So I don't know how well that would go over with people.
Man, I'd love to play a remastered Sewer Shark.
Yeah.
So is it that the video You don't have another source for that in some way, like another rip or something of that nature?
No, the only like with Sewer Shark, we weren't even trying to locate the video for Sewer Shark, because what I really wanted to do was Ground Zero Texas. Within where the Flash Film Works, they own most of the digital picture games. They own all of them except for Night Trap, Ground Zero Texas, and Sewer Shark, but they own the rest because they bought all of them when Digital Pictures filed for bankruptcy. They were going through boxes trying to find they were trying to find tapes for Double Switch, because the tapes that they had for that game, the way they had the tape set up was that each tape was all the footage for a specific room. Like Double Switch has 7 different rooms you can go in, and each room had its own specific tape. Well, the tape for the storage room was actually damaged, so they were trying to find another tape that had better footage for that room. And then they found a box in storage that they got when they purchased all the stuff in the 90s, and it was labeled promotion material. Well, they hadn't opened this box in over 20 years, didn't think to open it because of how it was labeled. They didn't think anything was in there. So they finally opened it a couple months ago, and they found the tape of Sewer Shark in there.
Wow.
And that's the only tape that we've been able to track down.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of Limited Run, have you ever worked with any of the other local devs? Because they're sort of local because they're in North Carolina, but like other devs and publishers in the area, like Gun Media out of Lexington. Have you ever worked with anybody else in the local area?
No, like when like Night Trap, that was my first game on a console, so I'm kind of meeting people as I go, and like with Limited Run, I got hooked up with them only because of the guys that made the Night Trap documentary for me, because they I didn't even know those guys. And then the guys that did the Night Trap documentary, they had also done one from Limited Run too.
You're talking about My Life in Gaming?
Yeah, My Life in Gaming.
Yeah.
And they were like Corey, he's one of the guys that's on the show. For several months, he was trying to get me to contact Limited Run about doing a physical release, and I'm just like, nah, they're not going to be into that. It's Night Trap. And then, because, you know, I try to keep it real. I know a lot of people don't like Night Trap, and that's cool. You know, it's whatever. So I didn't really think much of it. And then when finally, when I did my interview for the documentary, Corey was all like, dude, you should try Limited Run. I'm like, I don't know those guys. And he's like, oh, I'll contact them for you. And then so he sent him an email right when he left my house, and 10 minutes later I get an email from Limited Run, and they're on board with it. And that was pretty much the first people I met in the quote unquote gaming industry.
Yeah.
So, but I've met a lot of people from Gun. They had a what was it, a launch party for Friday the 13th out in Las Vegas last February.
Yeah.
They actually called it the Better Late Than Never launch party. And then I met some guy who was actually a tester on the game because of Night Trap, and then he got invited to it at the very last minute. They put it together quick. I think everyone that was invited got a week's notice, and then he hit me up and was all like, hey, you want to go to Vegas for the Friday the 13th launch party? And I'm like, that game came out like 8 months ago. What launch party? And then he's all like, then he sent me the flyer, and sure enough, it said the Better Late Than Never launch party. And I was like, cool, I'll go, whatever. And then when I went out there, I met a bunch of dudes from Gun and Ilphonic. And then I met I want to say he's the creative director for Friday the 13th, Randy. What's his last name? I think it's Greenback. I met him, and the first thing he said to me was, dude, are you working on Double Switch? And I'm just like, dude, keep that on the download. It's not done yet. But yeah, they were all cool guys. It was funny because it was like as soon as I got introduced to them, they're all like, hey, this is Tyler. He did Night Trap. And they're like, what? You did Night Trap? That's awesome. And I'm just like, why are you guys freaking out? Your game's better than mine. I mean, come on now.
Well, you gotta look at what you did, man. You brought something that's a bit of a phenomenon back. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
Something like
so
that.
I assume that it was a simple choice to go with Limited Run on the Switch once you knew that you were kind of heading that direction. But that kind of leads us to the next question here. At what point did you realize that you wanted to bring the game over to Switch when, as we're all rather aware, Howard Lincoln told America that Night Trap, quote, will never appear on a Nintendo system. That big famous quote.
Oh, man. Getting it on Switch was honestly a nightmare. It really was. So I don't think I've ever really told this story before. So, I mean, I didn't sign anything, so I guess I can tell it. So I got to like backtrack a little bit to give the full story on this. So what happened was before Night Trap was finally announced for the first time, I was trying to figure out how to get it released on Nintendo Switch. Because at that point, I already knew, like, the game was already rated at that point, and it got a teen rating. So I was like, okay, it has a teen rating. They can't say no to this. So then I tried figuring out how to get it released on Switch, and I signed up as a Nintendo developer. There's nothing for Switch listed. It's all Wii U stuff. And I think at that point, it was already announced they were ending Wii U's life cycle. So then found an email address. Can't even count how many times I sent an email to this thing. Never got a reply. Then then Night Trap gets announced, and then a random fan on Twitter was all like, "Hey, you going to bring this to Nintendo Switch?" And just as a joke, I was all like, "Yeah, I'll definitely release it on Switch. Do you happen to know anyone at Nintendo by any chance?" And then he was all like, "Oh, contact this guy." I'm like, "Oh, wow, really?" So then I go to this. I don't want to say this guy's name just because I seem like I'm bad mouthing. So I go to this guy's Twitter page, and sure enough, there's a pinned tweet at the top that says, "If any indies are interested in releasing a game on Nintendo Switch, send me a DM." So I was like, "Really? That's how you do it?" Great. So then
we won't say.
All right. So I sent him a DM, and he immediately responded. This was about 2 or 3 days after Night Trap was announced. And then sent him a DM, and then he immediately replied back and was all like, "Hey, congratulations on the Night Trap announcement. We'd love to have this on Nintendo Switch." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, Night Trap is coming to Nintendo." And then he was all like, "We'd love to do a simultaneous release, but if it's not possible, it's totally cool, but we definitely want to get it released in the sometime afterwards, like within a couple months of the PlayStation release." And I'm like, "Totally cool. We can do that. I mean, I can definitely shoot for a simultaneous release too." So then he's all like, "Here's my email. Send me an email, and then I'll introduce you to the team." So I'm all high-fiving myself like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be the guy that brings Night Trap to Nintendo," and basically give the middle finger to Howard Lincoln. And then so I sent him an email. I told him what my plans were, which was, this is the tentative date for Night Trap, but it's not definite. Which was at the time I had announced that Night Trap was coming in spring, but I didn't announce an exact release date yet. It was going to be the last day of spring, which happened to be on a Tuesday. And then so I think it was like 2 months away at that point. I was like, "Yeah, this is the date I'm kind of eyeballing right now, but if needed, I can go ahead and postpone the other releases so that way the Nintendo Switch version is released at the same time, so that way it's a simultaneous release across all platforms. I just need you guys to get me a Switch dev kit as soon as possible." So then the response I got was that, "Due to the time frames that you've given, we're going to have to pass on this." And I'm just like, "What time frames?" I sent him a reply like, "What time frames? I offered to delay it on PlayStation and Xbox for you guys, so I don't understand what you mean." And then I sent probably 3 emails a week for 2 months, never got a reply to any of them. So I was like, okay, I guess Night Trap on Switch is officially dead and it's not going to happen. And then I want to say it was on it was on Halloween. I was out taking my daughter trick-or-treating. I get a DM from Josh from Limited Run, and he was all like, I don't think they had announced that they were going to be doing Switch releases yet, but I kind of knew it was in the works. And then he was like, "Do you still want to get Night Trap on Nintendo Switch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely, but they won't let me do it." And then he was all like, "Well, how about you just send us the code and we'll port it over and we'll publish it for you?" I'm like, "Done, let's do it." So that's how that happened.
That's a hell of a journey right there.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, I mean, because that's a man, that's just the irony of how this game has been with them. But now that all that's happened, do you feel that you've kind of come full circle with Night Trap now? You've done the Switch release. It's well underway. The collector's editions are shipping out. Do you feel like this is kind of now complete with Night Trap?
Yes and no. It's like my whole gripe with like the Nintendo version is that like, yeah, it's awesome that Night Trap's finally on Nintendo and I was involved with it, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't feel like it's my game, if that makes sense. Like, I know it's my game, like I built it, but I guess because I didn't go through the whole process of like porting it over to Switch myself and then submitting it to Nintendo and dealing with all them, I guess like I don't have an attachment to it like I do with the PlayStation 1, where with the PlayStation 1, I can look at it and be all like, yeah, this was my first game I released on a console. And with Nintendo, I really don't get that. I don't know if that sounds weird or not.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that. So
yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about the Nintendo one. I mean, it's glad. I mean, I'm glad that it's finally on Nintendo because I mean, it's silly that it wasn't allowed on there to begin with. But at the same time, it was like, it wasn't even possible to really get Night Trap on Nintendo at the time because the Nintendo systems wouldn't have been able to run it. So
right.
So the limited run did the release, and they had the nice special editions. Like the PlayStation Special Edition came with like a cassette tape and stuff like that.
Cassette tape with the theme song.
Yeah. So now we have the Switch Special Editions. They're starting to get ready to ship out if they're not already out now. By the time this goes
they've been shipping out.
Yeah, but as I said, by the time this goes on air, most of them will probably be in the hands of the collectors and stuff. But was there anything that you would have liked to have seen included in a collector's edition that maybe they didn't put in, something that you thought would really kind of go with the theme and be really neat to see in a collector's edition that just didn't get put in there?
The one thing I wish that we could have included was a copy of the script. Because there's a lot of Night Trap fans that are not even Night Trap, this game, like fans of digital pictures in general, that are like really hardcore movie buffs. They like collect like scripts and props from their favorite movies, and a lot of them actually work in the film industry. So they're into that sort of thing, like all the behind the scenes stuff. And I think it would have been cool to include the script with it. That's the only thing I wish we could have gotten there.
Yeah, the Switch edition came with like a Sega CD case and a VHS and a steelbook. Which is kind of
VHS is really cool.
Yeah, but now the script
very last minute.
The script would have been that would have been really nice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was one of those things where it was like, I think it was like a friend of mine suggested, he was all like, why not sell a Night Trap VHS? And I'm like, why didn't we do that before a PlayStation? It's like, oh yeah, I didn't really have enough time to put it together. So I hit up Josh and it was like, is it possible to do like a VHS version of Night Trap where it's like edited into a movie? It's like, yeah, but I need it as soon as possible, like this weekend, which was in like 5 days. So I had to really like sit there and edit the hell out of that thing in like such a short amount of time. But it turned out really good though, I think.
Yeah, I know when it was first announced, there was a guy, a hardcore fan on YouTube that actually uploaded the entire game to YouTube like that, like as a movie to watch. I thought that was
I know him. His name's Keith. He's actually the only person that has seen the VHS version of Night Trap outside of Limited Run, because he was kind of giving me tips along the way, and then once I finished it, I sent it to him, and I was all like, "Watch this, let me know what you think," and then. Because he's been doing this for years, making his own like film versions of Night Trap, and then
he has like Night Trap tattoos and stuff.
Yeah, he's got a whole Night Trap sleeve. Yeah, and then he watched it, and then he was all like, "I approve," and I'm like, "All right, that's enough for me."
That's a good stamp of approval right there.
Yeah.
So aside from him, obviously, have there been any hardcore fans that have come out and thank you for bringing the game to modern systems? And how's that been? Was it more or less expected?
Yeah, it was. A lot of it's mostly from the Night Trap group on Facebook. There's actually a Facebook group specifically for Night Trap. It's been around since. I want to say it's been around since like 2006. It's been on there for quite a while. So yeah, a lot of them on there, they were freaking out when Night Trap got announced. As soon as it was time to announce it, like as soon as the trailer went live, I posted the link in there, and they're like, "Is this real? This has got to be fake." And I'm like, "Click on the video. It's on the PlayStation YouTube channel. This is legit." So yeah, a lot of those people were freaking out about it.
Why am I not surprised there's a Facebook group for that?
Yeah. I think it's got like 600 members or something like that. It was just a bunch of hardcore fans that like a few people that there's a few people in there that made like fan versions of Night Trap that when they were trying to do it themselves. And then a lot of them were like basically trying to come up, like throughout the years, it was basically them trying to come up with ways to bring back all of these games. And they were all like, you know, why don't we contact Tom Zito and see if he's interested? Or why don't we contact this developer and see if they would be interested in recreating Night Trap for us? And then, so yeah, that's pretty much all that group was, just a bunch of fans trying to come up with ways to get it re-released.
Let's shift gears a bit here and turn our attention to the news that you almost literally just broke. Double Switch, another full motion video game classic, was just officially announced for PS4 and Steam. In fact, when you and I when I reached out to you to get the timing for this interview, that couldn't have been any better, because I think it was about a half an hour before you were going to announce it. So
yeah.
Congratulations, by the way, on the announcement. And can you tell us how long you've been working on bringing this out?
Double Switch. It took a little work to make happen, but as far as development goes, it was finished much faster than Night Trap. I want to say with Double Switch, it was kind of that actually came up before Night Trap. So with Double Switch, what happened was it was basically the same thing as Night Trap. I made a working prototype of the game for mobile, but I didn't upload it online. I sent it to Tom Zito thinking he owned the game, and then he forwarded it to the guy that actually did own it currently, which was a guy named Bill Mesa, who owns a visual effects studio in Hollywood called Flash Filmworks. They do a bunch of visual effects for movies. And then same thing. He asked for my phone number, called me the next day, and then wanted me to remake all these games for him, but he wanted them on mobile. And then so for about a year, I was trying to talk him into doing console, but he didn't want to mess with it for whatever reason. He thought it'd be too much of a pain in the ass to do for whatever reason. And then when Night Trap happened, I went back to him and I was all like, "Hey, I got Night Trap on console. Can we please do Double Switch now?" And then he was like, "Well, let me see how Night Trap goes first." And then once Night Trap was announced and then it went on sale, and he saw that people actually wanted to play the game, he was like, "Okay, we can go ahead and do Double Switch now." So I got the go-ahead to start that last January. And then maybe it was February. Yeah, I got it in February, and then that's when I started on it. And then it was finished in June, when it was because Limited Run wanted to do like a teaser announcement for their E3 press conference that they were live streaming on Twitch.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was actually the week I finished the game, but I didn't want to announce it yet because I wanted to do some serious hardcore testing on it first, because Double Switch was made in a completely different way than Night Trap. So I knew it was going to be, more prone to bugs just because it was a bunch of new stuff I was doing. So I wanted to really hardcore test it first before announcing it. And so, yeah, that game's been done since June or July now.
So I know,
kind of sitting on it for a little bit.
Well, sometimes you have to do that, right? Sometimes you're going to get in a situation where you got to do things like that.
Yeah, and then plus at the time, Night Trap for Switch hadn't even gone on sale yet, so I kind of wanted to wait until that was done and over with first. Yeah,
you don't want to steamroll one with the announcement of another,
right?
And I know you're going to get it's probably already happening. You're going to get tired of hearing this question, but due to our audience, I have to ask. I'm sure, but is there any chance we're going to see Double Switch come over to the Nintendo Switch?
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. Limited Run, they're actually porting it for me again. They started it already, and the goal is January.
Very nice.
So, but yeah, Double Switch on Switch will happen.
We're all going to be super excited about that. I know.
And yeah, and just to point out, this is not a this is not you saying that they're going to do a physical copy of it. This is them bringing a digital copy of it before anybody hears this and is like, oh, they're going to bring Double Switch physically. That's not confirmed. We got to hear it from them. But,
right. Yeah, I don't want people to start blowing them up like, when's Double Switch go on sale for Nintendo Switch? It's like, we haven't even officially announced it for Switch yet. Give us a minute. So, I mean, let us finish it first.
but it is great to hear, because I think the fans are going to, let's face it, you say that with all the caveats, but we know what limited runs bread and butter is. We know Josh and Doug. We've talked to them.
Josh has brought up Double Switch in a fondness for Double Switch. Yeah, like he brings up Corey Haim and Arlie Ermy. He just loves it.
Oh yeah, like even like going back to that, like even when like Night Trap first got announced, at the time it was looking like I was trying to make Double Switch happen, and it was looking like it was going in that direction to where I was going to be able to do it. But he kept talking nonstop about it, constantly dropping comments about it. I get on Twitter and DM him like, dude, shut up. I don't want anyone to know I'm doing it yet.
Well, he's enthusiastic, and I think that's a really good thing. He's got a friend like that.
He's a big Sega nerd too, so that makes it even better. So
he's big on the Dreamcast.
Working with them was honestly perfect, because I mean, they get it, and that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, they definitely do. We like talking to Josh and Doug. We've had them on the show. They're hanging out in our Discord, which we hope you're going to join us in the community Discord for a little discussion too with some of the folks. But yeah, that's they're the right people for this particular thing. They get it. They're big fans, so we're happy you guys are kind of partnered up on all of this. So.
Right, and like they totally get it too, because like with Night Trap, I mean, they have very specific time period to them. Like with Night Trap, I mean, when you look at it, you could tell it's from the 80s. So Josh's immediate thought was, let's do some 80s themed merchandise. And I'm like, dude, that's perfect. Let's do it. What do you want to do? He's like, well, we could do a cassette tape, since that's what everyone listened to at the time. And then we'll even do a vinyl. And I'm like, dude, I'm sold on this. You could do whatever you want. I don't care. Because, I mean, you get it. I trust you. So...
Yeah.
Like at one point he threw out the idea of Pogs, but
that's
okay. So me and Josh have talked about Pogs quite a bit, and because I was telling him, I was like, if you do a Saturday morning RPG 2, you should include Pogs in the because that's perfect. They did scratch and sniff stickers in the first game. I was like, you should do Pogs. Pogs would be perfect to package in with the collector's edition, and we'll see how he takes that. But yeah, he and I talked about Pogs when we were interviewing him for the show, and it's great.
Yeah, like the way that came up was kind of out of a joke, because we were I think we were just like tweeting each other back and forth, and then just as a joke, I was all like, how about we get a Night Trap fidget spinner that looks like the giant hook from the game? Because at the time everyone was freaking out about fidget spinners, and then he's all like, dude, let's do Pogs. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome, let's do it. And we never did for whatever reason, but oh yeah, that just reminded me of something. Going back to what you asked earlier about one thing I wish we could have included. At the time, I really wanted an Augur action figure, but I didn't think it was possible. And then Saturday Morning RPG made action figures happen. So that's one I wish I would have brought up.
Yeah, well, I mean,
when we get to the 50th anniversary in 25 years, you do that.
Oh God!
Yeah, I think a Troker fidget spinner would have been really neat. That would have been great.
Yeah.
So,
you referred it by the real name. That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Night. I played Night Trap back on the Sega CD when I was a kid. A friend of mine down the road had a Sega CD, and I remember sitting there, and he had this magazine that had all the times to go to the different screens, and he was just sitting there like, I was just like, this is weird, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, I've kept up with Night Trap a little bit.
It was weird because like even when I first played Night Trap, like I didn't get it. Like, and I played it the same way as you. Like, I had a friend that had a Sega CD because, like, we all had that rich friend in school who had a Sega CD because not a lot of people had them. And then he had Night Trap, and when I played it, I was like, this looks awesome, but I don't understand what in the hell's going on with this game. And then a couple years later, Double Switch came out on Saturn, which is basically the same thing as Night Trap, but has a bunch of stuff added to it. And I was like, okay, I get this now. This is awesome. So yeah, which ironically, Double Switch is my favorite game from Digital Pictures.
Oh, well then this next question kind of falls in that. Is like Double Switch has a marginal evolution in gameplay compared to Night Trap. And the question was, which one did you prefer and why? So obviously it's Double Switch. So what draws you to Double Switch more so than Night Trap?
I think like the Double Switch is basically, I guess, the spiritual sequel to Night Trap. And then it kind of has more variety to it. Like with Night Trap, it's basically 25 minutes of capturing augers, and that's it. But with Double Switch, they have it broken up into 3 different acts, and each one has its own objective. So I guess it has a little bit more gameplay involved, because like with Act 1, you got to go around and try to get all the code numbers, and then Act 2 is unlocking new traps and trying to capture the mummy that appears, and then Act 3, I don't want to say what you do in Act 3. It's kind of a spoiler alert for people that haven't played the game. But yeah, it kind of has a little bit more gameplay involved with it. And then another thing about it is that Double Switch is kind of like, I guess it kind of has, it's a little bit more random. Like with Night Trap, it's the same thing every time. But with Double Switch, there's some randomness to it. Like all the scenes for the main story, they play in the same order and at the same time every time you play it. But as far as like when you capture intruders and stuff like that, those change every time. It's not always the same one. So it doesn't feel like the same game every time you play it. And then at the time it came out, like it has Corey Haim in it, and Debbie Harry, who's the singer for Blondie. And then I didn't know who he was at the time, but Arlie Emery.
I love
the drill sergeant. Yeah. And then at the time, celebrities in video games, that wasn't a common thing. So that was completely new to me. So I think that's kind of why Double Switch stuck with me.
That kind of unique moment in time with full motion video games, and having, especially like you said, having the celebrities kind of there. I mean, you had Dana Plato in Night Trap, which was, marginally celebrity. People knew who she was
for the time,
but it wasn't. Yeah, it still wasn't an A-list.
I think the first full motion video, sort of full motion video, partially full motion video game that had celebrities in it that a lot of people know as Wing Commander because of Mark Hamill.
Yeah, right. You got Hamill. Yeah.
And then you got Tia Carrere from Wayne's World. She's in one.
That's right.
Hulk Hogan has a full motion video game.
It would be really interesting to see maybe some of the lesser known games like that people maybe didn't get a chance to play. Maybe bringing some of those over.
Right.
Hint.
Got tracked down who owns them. That's the problem with it.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
You got some licenses in your back pocket there, Soul?
I might. We'll talk later. Were there any unique challenges in bringing Double Switch over to modern systems? I know that you had some interesting challenges with what you had to do for Night Trap, but was it different for Double Switch?
Yeah, it was a lot different. Like with you guys, you said you're a programmer, right?
Yeah, that's what I do for a living. Yeah.
Okay, so this should make sense to you then. Okay, so are you familiar with the gaming engine Unity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the engine I use to build all these games, just because I can bust them out faster on that. Like, I don't use pre-made assets or anything like that, so I don't want people to think I'm an asset flipper or anything. But Unity is actually a legit engine. It just gets a bad rep on Steam. But,
yeah.
So the way I had to make Night Trap was that there's a video player that's built into Unity. It doesn't work on consoles. So I was like, oh, great. How am I going to pull this off? So I had to come up with like a really, I guess, a clever way to do video on Night Trap. And what it does, like the way Night Trap works is that it's actually just a really fancy image sequencer. What it does is it cycles through thousands of frames of images to simulate video. which I mean, which is a pain. Like it was a pain in the ass to get it to work that way. But then with Double Switch, they finally added compatibility with the video player, so now it works on consoles. Well, it brought on a whole list of new like technical issues and bugs, and then at one point there was this really bad glitch I ran into with Double Switch with the video player, because when I loaded on PlayStation 4, it kept crashing for no reason. Like it would crash whenever a specific video ended. And then I sent it to I was able to send it to Unity and have them investigate it. And they came back and they were all like, honestly, the way that you made this game, we have never seen a video game before use video the way this one does. We have no idea how to get around this issue. So, yeah, I stumped Unity with it. But luckily, I was able to get around it.
Awesome. Yeah, Unity is.
And just to go back, just before we get past that, you mentioned another name, and when we were talking about the folks in Double Switch, it's kind of something that I didn't like have in the list of topics, but it is something that's stuck in my head. Maybe there's a curse in a way to being in some of these games, you know, with Dana and Corey and Arlie Ermy, you know, that although he just got old, but Corey had an untimely demise, and so did Dana. Is there a curse attached to this stuff?
There's actually more than that with Double Switch. There's like with Night Trap, Dana Plato's obviously not with us anymore. And then so is and also the guy that plays Victor Martin, the father. He passed away about 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I believe that was old age though. But with Double Switch, you got Corey Haim, you got Arlie. Who was the other one you said?
Well, I know that we have.
No, you just.
Debbie and Dana.
She's alive.
Yeah, those two. And then you also got the guy that played Brutus, the drummer for the band that's in the game, and then also one of the Egyptian dancers. So there's like 5 of them in Double Switch that passed away. That's
a scary thing. Maybe don't.
Oh wait, there's 6. I forgot. There's another one too. There's the A&R guy that comes to watch the band perform. He passed away recently too. So yeah, there's 6 of them Double Switch. So
like my final question might have been indirectly answered then, because I was saying I checked out your IMDb page, and you're actually listed as being in My Life in Gaming.
I'm listed on IMDb.
You are under My Life in you have one listing under My Life in Gaming. And I was gonna ask if you thought that was incomplete. Maybe you might want to show up in an FMV game, but it sounds to me like nobody should want to, out of fear of.
Yeah, I don't think I can pull it off.
Yeah. So, but that kind of that ends all of our normal questioning here. Soul, you have anything else you want to?
No, not along the. Well, maybe along the lines of this. I mean. I did have one other thing that's kind of been nagging at me here. You know, you've done these 2 FMV style games, and I'm sure you in the back of your mind you want to bring some other ones. I mean, we kind of know that there's other FMV games that would be great to kind of revive. But are there other things you want to do in gaming outside of the FMV world?
Yeah, eventually. It's like, the way I look at it is that I don't think I'm experienced. Well, I don't want to say that. Like, I'm trying to think how to answer this.
You've developed more games than I have.
Like, honestly, like with FMV games, I think it's like I've tried making my own stuff before, but my problem with it is that it gets blown up into something bigger than what it should be. And then I feel like I'm never going to finish it. And then, but with FMV, on the other hand, bringing back these games, I mean, I'm honestly having fun doing that, just because I get to work on something that I played during my childhood and get to put my own spin on it. And I feel like it's more fun to remake a game that makes something completely new. So I think once I get more, I guess I can go ahead and say it. I think once I get more experience and then get the rest of these FMV games out, then I'll probably start doing original stuff. But it's probably going to be a while before that even happens. I mean, until I stop having fun with FMV, that's when I'll finally move on to the next thing. And right now, I'm having fun doing it, and that's all that matters. Because once it starts feeling like a job, then yeah, something's got to change.
I hear you. Well, I can tell you that, before we get to kind of our little bonus question here, we're all very happy that you were able to do what you've done so far with both Night Trap and then, of course, this fresh announcement about Double Switch. And I hope that I can speak for others and say we're really excited to see what you bring in the future.
Thank you. I'm honestly surprised. Like, I'm still blown away that nobody did this sooner. Because, remakes and remasters, it's a very common thing now. But even when I started Night Trap, I was like, before I started Night Trap, I was like, how come nobody's remaking Sega CD games? And at the time, the only thing we really had was Sonic CD, and that wasn't even really a remake. That was basically just, the original version. So to me, it seemed like the perfect thing to do, just because, a lot of those games from that era used full motion video and never seen them in good quality. So why not?
Okay, so generally at the end of an interview, we do have one bonus question. It's usually unrelated to the normal topics at hand. It's just kind of a little extra question we throw in there. So the question that we picked up for you was, if you decided to pack up the company and move your development to a more heavily saturated environment, something like Seattle or California, where a lot of developers and publishers are, what would you miss most about where you are now, and why is it L81?
I think the only thing I would probably miss would be, that's a hard one.
As long as you don't say Skyline Chili, I think we're okay.
No, I'm a Gold Star
I agree
guy.
with you.
Oh, okay.
I like Gold Star. I fight with my girlfriend about that all the time. She's like, let's go to Skyline for dinner. I'm like, no, we're going to Gold Star. It's across the street. It's better.
Skyline is terrible.
Skyline spaghetti is tinted orange, and that weirds me out. But, oh, man, I would probably say, that's tough. I got to say Fago.
Wow, really?
I don't think they have that out west.
They might not. Fago is a Michigan thing, but you do find it in Kentucky pretty regularly. So yeah, that's I never thought about Fago.
Yeah,
well,
it's kind of a random answer.
I know from being a
juggalo. You were a juggalo?
Researcher and I know from being a researcher and a snooper. I do my background check. I do know that you are an ICP fan.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to say that that's good or bad. I'm going to let everybody make their own opinion about that.
I won't talk
out there.
I won't talk about it on the podcast here, but if you want to discuss things privately, I can talk ICP with you. It's okay.
I wouldn't call myself a juggalo, but I did go through that phase in high school. I will admit it, and I'll just leave it at that.
A lot of us did. Apparently sold it.
Speak for yourself.
Juggalos now is kind of looked at as a big joke, and back then it wasn't like that. It's just I don't know what in the hell happened over the years, because I kind of slipped out of it for like 10 years and wasn't into it anymore. And then one day I was like, I wonder what ICP's up to. And then I look up a video and I'm like, man, that's depressing. They're looking kind of old now.
Yeah.
Started getting back into it again. But I mean, I don't go to the gathering or anything like that. So I got a wide musical taste, I guess you could say.
the internet never forgets. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, Tyler, I got to say it's been a real pleasure, though, to talk to you and have you share a little bit about what's been going on with Screaming Villains. And how did that name come about? Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
This is a terrible answer for this question, but it was honestly the first name I thought of that was available. Like, I had to, when I was doing the application process for Sony and Microsoft, I had to have a company name, and I didn't have one. So then I started trying a whole bunch of random different names because I wanted one that had a domain name available. And then, like, I didn't want to do some stupid variation, like, you know, this and this games or something like that, you know. So then, or like something .net or .org. I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted it to be .com. So then tried a bunch of names. None of them were working. And then, I thought of super villains, and I was all like, that's going to be taken. I'm not even going to try that. And then I thought super villains abbreviated with the SV was kind of cool. So then I just started sticking random words together that started with the letter S and V, and Screaming Villains was the first one I ran into that was available. But I mean, I wish that was a cooler story, but looking back, I probably should have put some more thought into it, because now I'm stuck with it. Not hating on it, but
the name's great.
It would have been cool to have like some name with some meaning, and then. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
no, I mean it works.
It works out fine, because I mean, no offense to companies like Red Barrel, because I mean, Red Barrels, I love Outlast, but Screaming Villains is a way better name than Red Barrels.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse.
Then, like, just to kind of make excuses for the name, I was all like, well, Rockstar Games, they're like the Rockstar Gaming. I want to be the villain of gaming that makes games that are universally hated on. So it's working out pretty well now.
Yeah. It could be worse. You could be a company by the name of, like, Maximum Games.
Oh,
yeah, that's kind of weak.
What a pot shot.
It is.
What a pot shot you took.
I had to take that.
That was low-hanging fruit, man.
Our
What's
listeners completely
like,
understand.
What's weird is, like, I kind of learned along the way that, like, some gaming studio names don't really have a cool meaning behind them. Like I had like my friend I mentioned that worked on the Call of Duty games. Like, I was like, how did Infinity Ward come up with their name? And he's like, man, that's the dumbest story ever. I'm like, well, what does it mean? You know? And then he was like, honestly, what happened was they were sitting in a meeting for several hours, couldn't come up with a name. And then one of them said, we're going to be here for Infinity. And then someone's just blurted out Infinity Ward. And I'm like, that's how they came up with their name? That's kind of stupid. So, yeah. So I don't feel too bad about the name I picked now.
Yeah, might as well throw a couple of darts at a newspaper if that's
right.
If that's what you want to do.
I honestly think that some companies might have done that.
It's possible.
But anyway, no, really, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to us about Night Trap and Double Switch. And, you know, we would love at some point in the future, kind of, you know, as things happen, have you back on the show, have you, you know, update everybody, tell us a little bit more about, you know, things in the future. Yeah,
definitely. There's actually going to be, I guess I'm dropping some new information right here, because I haven't told anyone this yet, but next game is probably going to be announced first quarter.
Wow.
So, nice.
Yeah, it's moving pretty quick.
Something to look forward to.
We'll definitely have something new to talk about.
Definitely. We would love to have you on and kind of get into it on whatever that is once we get a chance to find out. So, but Tyler, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Man, was it fun to talk to Tyler. That was a wonderful interview. And what our listeners don't even know is that once that interview was over, he hung out and talked to us for like 4 more hours. Like, he is an awesome guy.
Yeah. We were up till like 1 a.m. talking to this guy.
Yeah, it was
great.
Awesome. I mean, talked about old games and stuff going on in the industry, and, you know, thoughts about Nintendo Online. So it was a wonderful experience, and I enjoyed hanging out with him greatly.
I did too, and I really hope that he gets a chance to interact with a lot of people on our Discord. Don't forget that we get as many of our guests that we can to join the Discord and hang out and talk with you guys. You know, we love talking to them, certainly, but we also love the opportunity to bring those people to you, bring our guests closer to the fans. You know, we've got a wonderful community at the Discord, and it's growing all the time, and we're getting more and more people. We just had so one of the guys from a brand new Kickstarter that's going to be kicking up pretty much right after, or that'll be kicking up right before this airs. That's for
Hazelnut Bastille.
Yeah, Bastille. So get out there, check out Hazelnut Bastille as well, and maybe fund that if the price is right for you. The project looks amazing, so I'm hoping that we can continue to do this and bring these people to you. But let's talk about what we're playing right now.
You go ahead and lead us off on that, because I know you've been playing so many games that you're brimming. Sadly, I am stuck in hell, not having beaten the boss yet for Dead Cells. You're stuck in Cell.
Oh, ow.
Yeah. I'm a dad, you guys. I can make those jokes.
I'm gonna forgive you for that one, because I'm a dad too. So you get that one for free.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody does get one. Yeah. So I made it to the boss again very recently, and honestly, I think I lasted longer the first time I faced him than I did this time.
And this is the final boss, the Hand of the King.
The Hand of the King. Okay. Yeah, he's got. The stage is set up with these 2 spike pits and very little to stand on the edges, and he kind of always runs and knocks you into these things, which does some serious damage. It's just really, this dude is extremely tough to beat, and I don't get as much time as I would like to be able to play. Now, granted, as we're recording this, I'm kind of towards the end of a vacation where I took a little bit more than a week off. But a good portion of this has been working on stuff for the podcast and doing other things around the house.
Playing Nintendo Online with me.
Yeah, playing online with you. So I haven't just been playing Dead Cells. Plus, we've had a huge amount of games coming where I've taking the time to make sure that those work, pop them in, start them up, play a little bit in those, that type of thing. So, I haven't put in as much time in Dead Cells as I would necessarily, I'll say, like.
Yeah, we had like 18 games come out in 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah. What's scary is that I have to edit this particular podcast and get that ready, and yet we're going to have another fortnightly coming up at the end that's going to come out on the same day as this. So, if you happen to be catching this and didn't catch the fortnightly that's coming, be sure to tune in, because we're going to have like another, basically another massive period of games for that as well. So hang in there. What are you playing? What are you doing?
So I partook in a couple of different games, and I'll try to keep them. Yeah, partook. I'll try to keep it a little bit brief. The first game that I played, and it's not very long, playing through just the main campaign of it, was Cat Quest by Gentle Bros and published by P-Cube.
Meow, tell me what you thought about that.
I'll tell you about that right now. So the game caught me completely off guard. It is a extremely fun little action RPG game. I absolutely loved it. It has a nice magic system. It has a nice battle system. It has a cute little story where your sister has been kidnapped and you're trying to get your sister back, and there's dragons. You're a dragon blood, so you have the ability to fight and kill dragons. It is really fun, and I won't ruin the story for anybody, but it is a fun little game. I would say that playing start to finish just the main campaign with enough side quests to level up and to get into the proper ranges to fight the dragons, you're looking at probably like 3.5, 4 hours maybe. But you do unlock New Game Plus and Mew Game Mode, which is a mode where you can select different modifiers, and depending on what modifiers you select, it increases the loot drops and stuff for you. So you can choose to fight with no armor, or you can choose to fight where you don't level, and you can choose to fight where you have just your bare hands. It's a neat little thing, and I actually tweeted at Gentle Bros, and I told them that the game caught me off guard and I absolutely loved it, and they warned me that Mew Game Mode is very challenging. So I'm looking forward to do that. But to also go off from that, I did play a little bit of Starlink. and I actually streamed Starlink for 5.5 hours. It was a really, really fun time. It's a phenomenal game. I'm not big into Toys to Life, so I'll tell you that I did not use the actual R-Wing and Fox and the weapons and stuff that came in my box. If you have the physical game, just by putting that in, you unlock all that stuff. You can control all that within the game. You don't have to use the physical the ships and stuff. So I opted to do that. Now I do have the R-Wing because, I mean, why would I not order the R-Wing? But
can we just say before you move on from that the R-Wing toy, the Star Fox figure, that they are incredibly cool.
Yes, they even have LEDs. Like there's an LED in the back of the R-Wing, so when everything's plugged in, you have light coming out the back, like the engine is on. It's really neat. So yeah, the toys are phenomenal. I'm actually thinking about buying more of them, at least the weapons anyway. And if you have GCU, they do count for the discount with GCU. So there is that. I think with the GCU discount, weapons are like $8 a piece, and there's 4 packs of 2. So you're looking like $30 after tax to get, maybe $32 after tax to get all the weapons. So that's a bit of a hassle, but because you can just buy the digital deluxe edition and have everything unlocked, but then you don't get the R-Wing toy. You get it in game, but not the toy. So I streamed that for about 5.5 hours. I had a lot of people come in and ask a lot of questions and interact and have fun. It was a really enjoyable time. I will tell you that it is a mix between like Destiny and No Man's Sky, and it is absolutely beautiful, especially docked, obviously. So it's absolutely beautiful. The transition between ground and air and space and back and forth was wonderful to watch. It's very cinematic. There were some jump puzzles that kind of tripped me up for a bit because you're basically jumping your ship. But it was really fun. Like the little mini boss battles are super great. But what it really leads me down to, and my main point is, if this is the type of quality we can expect from a space game made by Ubisoft, I feel like Nintendo needs to give them the rights to make a full-blown Star Fox game.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing.
For the little bit of time that I spent actually playing that in between things, when I got it, unboxed it, checked it all out, I was pretty blown away. First off, the cinematics, even though, you know, the Switch doesn't have the quality of picture that, say, obviously like a Xbone or a PS4 has, it looked great. The cinematics looked amazing on there. And then on top of that, like the space shooting aspect of it, really, it felt, you know what it felt like? In a lot of ways, space. It felt like, well, no, I was thinking like, you know, I'm old school, so I was thinking like, gosh, this sort of feels a little bit, in a way, the flight and shooting and everything felt a little bit like TIE Fighter versus X-Wing.
Yeah, I can see that. The one thing that's kind of neat though is if you played the original Star Fox 64, one of the things you could do is you could do the loop if you hit up and the booster button. You would do a loop so that people trailing you would shoot off in front of you and you'd be behind them. But if you hit back in the booster, you would shoot up in the air like a half loop and then shoot off in the opposite direction, like just do a quick 180. And that is in Starlink. If you hit up and the booster button, I don't know about the loop, but if you hit up and the booster button, you will fly up in a half circle and then fire off in the other direction and do a 180. And I thought that was kind of neat because I just tried it out of you know, just muscle memory from playing Star Fox 64, and it did it. And I'm like, that is awesome. So it made the dogfights out in space a whole lot easier. And it was just a whole lot of fun. I loved games like Descent Free Space, and it reminded me so much of that it was just a whole lot of fun. The music that kicks in. There's 2 points that the music kicks in that is really awesome. One is when you're fighting the primes, and when you're fighting them on the planet level, the music kicks in is super epic, absolutely epic. But what everybody is going to really enjoy and focus on, especially, I mean, really just the Switch players though, is when you use your pilot ability as Star Fox, you call down a random member of your team, and the Star Fox like Corneria music starts playing, and it is absolutely awesome. Great throwback. I can't say enough good things about Starlink.
Do a barrel roll.
You can do barrel rolls if you are in air mode and you tap left or right with the boost button. You will do a barrel roll.
But it's not just that you can do it. There's actually line in there where they're telling you to do it, just like they would in the previous games.
Yeah. All three members, well, 4 if you include Star Fox, but the other 3 members of the Star Fox crew they're all there, and they're all voiced, and it's all great.
It's so weird because honestly, there's so much Star Fox in the game. It pretty much is a Star Fox game too.
Almost,
so,
yeah.
It's pretty surprising to me, the amount of that. I thought it would just be kind of like shoehorned in there, but no, like right from the get-go, he's a part of the story.
Yeah, he is in the cutscenes, he's in the cinematics, fully voiced. The characters interact with them in the cutscenes. You know, like back in the day, yeah, back in the day, like Final Fantasy VII, you had the optional characters of Vincent and Yuffie that never showed up in any of the cutscenes. Because they were optional characters. They couldn't just program them, extra cutscenes in just in case you had them. So they just weren't there. But in this case, Fox is in every cutscene. He is a part of the story.
Yeah. This is the seeds. This is what they could use as a springboard to really do something amazing with Star Fox.
Hey, you could do Star Fox Adventure 2 for all it really matters. I mean, if Ubisoft is at the helm and this is the kind of quality I can expect, I'm all for it.
I agree. I think that's going to bring us to the end of our show.
So be sure to do all that like, comment, subscribe stuff.
Tweet any questions, concerns, or corrections to us. This has been Soul and Cyrix.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.